residents who line up every day to testify and tell you their stories. People who are elderly, people who have young children, people who have disabilities, and just
ready when you are. I'll just.
We're live, brother. Tweet. We're live, man.
Oh, well. Okay, got emergency hearings going on in Canada.
Prolonged holding of those air horns. 400 commercial trucks congregated in downtown Ottawa, and the people felt abandoned by their authorities. It's going to take a while for this city to heal internally. There's been a breakdown in trust in the local authorities.
It's just sad.
And every level of government. And we're looking forward to hearing the evidence. We're looking forward to hopefully getting some answers factually about what happened and what were the breakdowns. And most importantly, that there's recommendations that hopefully come from this proceeding to ensure that serious disruptions to people's lives living in Ottawa never occurs again, while at the same time we absolutely are protecting and celebrating and ensuring that the right to protest and assemble are not unduly interfered with in future. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I'm about to turn to the various organizations that are also have standing. But before I do so, avant de passer aux différents
Okay, here we are, Public Order Emergency Commission. I'll be honest with you, we kind of wanted to cover this. We did, we really did, but a little bit conflicted because I'm so sick of the politicians. I don't believe anything they say. Same thing here, the way they're doing it. They're saying they're going to put out a document dump, but the documents themselves are not going to be necessarily made public. They're going to be made public under an NDA to the people who are part of the Emergency Commission, Public Order Emergency Commission. Is that a public commission? You tell me. Is that public then if the documents themselves are not being made public, but only to the people who are part of that commission? Let's continue. We're going to be covering this, Pan and myself, and we are going to be commenting. Here we go. Let's take a look. Everyone's rising. Okay, they're taking a little break.
But I'm wearing another hat now. So it's not a court. You can stand if you like. It's sometimes good.
People are still wearing masks.
C'est pas nécessaire de se tenir quand on rentre et sort. C'est pas une cour et je n'y insiste pas. Merci. Thank you.
All right, there we go. So that's going to start in a second here. I'm going to reduce the volume from this thing.
The commission is in recess for 15 minutes. La commission est levée pour 15 minutes.
Recess. All right, there you go. So I just reduced the volume on that one right there. Hail the chat, hail brethren. Let me just, I think, see, they don't even mute properly. They haven't muted. I'm going to have to reduce their volume because they haven't muted in the background noise. All right, let's take a look at the chat.
They are amateurs.
Yeah, they sure are, brother. They really are. Let me see over here what we got. All right, there we go. Okay, so if you're just joining us, what we're doing here is during intermission. They're going to be doing this every day. Went through the list. I'm going to pull up the page over here. I'm not happy. Don't expect too many jokes. Maybe Pan is going to be able to brighten the mood. I really hope you can, Pan, because otherwise I might end up just putting a B to my H.
No, don't do that. We're going to get through this together, We started with the convoy, we held the line, and we're going to continue that. So here we are. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
I'm really sick of politicians and all the nonsense, and now this, to me, is... I feel like the government's trolling me at this point. You know what I mean, Pan? They're just trolling
Well, they
me.
are. They are. They are trolling you.
Yeah. All right, let me see here. So Public Order Emergency Commission, in case you don't know. Here we go. Okay. That's a list. That's from the site. If you click off and you hit the stream, this is the one with the people who are motioning. Watch a live webcast of the Commission's public hearing or archive recordings. It's just starting. All right, so there it is. Today's the beginning. They've just been doing an introductory list. Witness list today. You're going to have Victoria de la Ronde, Zexi Lee, a couple of these people here. Mathieu Fleury. This is the guy who was heavily against the United People of Canada. They had actually been in process of purchasing a church.
He hates Tupac.
Everybody you see here basically hates freedom and hates anybody wanting discussion. That's a list of people who they're bringing on as witnesses. Preliminary list of witnesses. Then you got, of course, Jim Watson. The city of Ottawa. He was the mayor of city of Ottawa. Now we're in elections again. It just goes on the list here. There's a couple people that are going to be interesting. Okay, it's going to be interesting to me to hear from Peter Slawley, which is the chap who was the commissioner, the chief of Ottawa Police, and then he just wasn't doing what he was told to do. So they replaced him with interim chief Steve Bell. You got Pat King, who's going to be here. That's going to be interesting to hear because he's got a gag order on here. You got James Bowder. That's going to be interesting. I do know that the Stanford the fine ladies over there went and sat with him, and he was going to have to sign an NDA. Looks like he signed that NDA to be here. Anybody on this list basically has to sign an NDA, okay? Because if you see this information here, let me see if I can get the document dump. If it talks about the document dump here. Okay, let's see your documents. No, it doesn't show it here, but I did see it from the CBC message. Give me 1 second here. Let me just pull that up and show that to you. But they've made it clear that this here it is. Okay, so this is from CBC. Yeah. Here it is. One of my kids in the background. Okay, at Rouleau's request, this is the head of the Public Order Emergency Commission. Rouleau, right? Justice Rouleau. The Liberal government has waived cabinet confidence on documents related to its invocation of the Act. That's the Emergency Act. It's only the fourth time in Canada's history that a public inquiry has been given access to such high-level documents. It is not clear yet how or if... It's not clear yet how or if those sensitive documents will be made public. Sorry about that. It's my kid's talking to the other kid on the internet voice from different rooms. Don't ask me. Yeah, literally in between rooms. So there's a bunch of documents here, this document dump, and I don't think you can scroll back here, okay, through this video feed until probably it's archived. I don't want to open it up again because in case I lose a spot, but here I'll show you. So once this thing's playing, you can't actually backtrack. You can't go back anywhere. There's only where you are. All history has been deleted. Right. So until it's archived and they put up the entire stream, which I expect to happen and I hope to happen, but you'll hear Justice Rouleau talk about how the documents themselves, that document dump, and Pat and myself, a couple other fellows from the war campaign were chatting in voice and just saying, "Hey, are we going to bother to do this or not?" And I heard this, and I'm like, man, this is... I mean, Pat, you heard that, the whole document dump not being put out public.
Yeah, they're going to make public what they want you to see, it seems like. So that's interesting.
Let's take a look at the chat. We got... I don't think Dictor has an NDA, says Kiss Junk. Everybody's got an NDA to be a part of this, brother. That's all there is to it, man. It doesn't matter whose name is on that list. They've signed an NDA. Almost positively. I could be wrong. Let's see here. We got Steve Robitaille. Thank you, War Campaign. Hail, brother. Hail, Steve. Appreciate you being here. Mandy McMahon. I wonder how the tyrant government feels about having to figure out what was going on, but the people in the streets knew. Democracy will never be taken without a huge uprising of sovereign beings, she says. You know what? I'm at the point, I think I take in the black suppository.
You're black-pilled.
I'm just going to live my life. Ottawa Hospital still, my wife's not the best these days. She's, I don't like to, I don't want sympathy or nothing, right? Everybody's got major problems out there, or a lot of people do. You got all kinds of stuff going on. And honestly, we are blessed. We're completely blessed, all said and done. But we can't, if she needs to be checked back into the hospital, right? I can't necessarily visit her there. And that's still the visitor policy. Now, somebody was kind enough to message me in one of the videos that I'd put together and put out there saying, "Hey, Ro, I work at the Ottawa Hospital. You just got to fill out an iPad or some tablet computer and attest your status, and then you walk in." So it's this whole game of lies, right? They're not actually checking any status or documents. They're just asking you to attest. But then again, that feels like communism to me. You know what I mean? You want me to put down a certain checkbox. It's like putting down, I am a this, I am a that, to get access to medical care or to, to be a patient advocate for my wife. So I'm pissed off. That's all there is to it. I'm still pissed off.
Black pilled to the max.
Yeah, but anyhow, excuse me. Roy Batty's son is asking to donate to Jeremy's Give, Send, Go. Lures are expensive, he says. We have Billy D. Hail the chat. Hail, Billy D. Hail, brother. We got FAQURN. Where did that go now? FAQURNWBS. NWBS. The real reason for Jeremy... No, that was... Sorry. It's moving fast here. Any one of these WEF scum lords being sent to prison yet? Asking for a friend. Mm-hmm.
That would be nice. Don't count on it, though.
Kim's tripping. I would live record it. I don't trust him to be transparent. Neither do I. I think we're just going to keep it running. We'll keep the tape running. That's what we'll do. We'll just keep the tape running over all the next coming days, every single day. Screw it. You know what I mean? I've been training
just 12 hours a day. We'll just go for it. We're going to be law tubers without any law degrees or knowledge. We're just here. But we're different than all the rest of the zombies. They're buying what they're putting down. We know it's all a force. It's a show. There's going to be no cross-examinations, So it's propaganda. And, probably be ripping some jokes on cucks, hair pieces maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to count on Penn to bring me down to earth because, man, like I said, I don't expect any justice at this point. I just don't, and there's a lot of people with their, paperwork and everything else. And, they're going to point out some loophole, some flaw in some document, this and that. What does a Bill of Rights mean? What does a charter mean? What does any of these papers mean? If the Canadian population at large, okay, if people at large are not willing to enforce or to stand up and say enough is enough, and thankfully they did. And that's why we're even here right now, right? The Freedom Convoy happened. Thankfully, people stood up and said enough is enough. I'm just hunkering down. I just want to teach my kids, train them. I want to be isolated from society because I don't trust it. I was walking my dog and a neighbor reported me. 3 cruisers came in like a week ago. You know what I mean? I'm walking my freaking dog with my daughter. 3 cruisers pull in. So wow. I'm just, you know what I mean? So, a neighbor reported that you're abusing your dog. I'm like, my daughter's doing what exactly? She's telling the dog, she's keeping him tight under control. This is a German Shepherd. These are big dogs. You got to keep them tight. You don't hit them, but you got to keep them tight. You walk correctly and you say no, and you say it loud if they're doing something wrong. It's just that's how it is, man. But this is a society of snitches we're living in. So I'm not very pleased. Sorry. Excuse me, please.
Yeah, I think it's especially bad maybe in, Ottawa. It seems like there's a lot of those snitch types,
Yeah.
Snitching on the convoy, snitching on neighbors.
Yeah, Kim's trip, it says, I'm with you, Ro. I'm always pissed off now. That's what I'm telling you, man. That's where I'm at.
Black-pilled.
Yeah, man. I want to be left alone. I don't care. You know what I mean? My kids are homeschooled. I'm not here to fight the entire school board. And hats off to the people that are doing that, because there are. Right? We know our man Scott out there. He sent some paperwork, and he was starting a lawsuit against one of the city councilors here in Ottawa for forcing the kids to be masked, even when everybody else didn't need to be masked. So hats off to them, okay? And there's so many amazing people doing all that work, and it's fantastic. But right now, I just want like a box around me. You know what I mean? I want a barrier outside of. I want to put a full gate, a moat around my house. That's what I want to do.
You need a gated community, but it's only your family within the gates.
That's right. You got it, man.
We have Hayes MTL says, Pan, try Quebec. Oh, so is Quebec worse than Ottawa?
Hey, we got Hayes in the house.
What do you think on that?
Yeah, man. Hayes, I know Hayes. Hayes is a good guy, man. He actually helped me out a lot when I needed some help, so a big appreciate that, and thank you, brother. Hayes out there, let me see, he's in there. Yeah, he goes, try Quebec. Yeah, so, and I've been talking to him, and I don't want to put any, too much out there, but just put it this way, is that even himself, who's in Quebec and he's outside of Montreal, he's had enough. Okay, a lot of Quebecers are like, this is it, man. And you see the CAQ getting elected again. This is Legault. This is the guy. You got faith in democracy? Here's the thing. Before I light up again over here, and I'm going to be lighting up 24/7 because I can't seem to keep my pipe going because I'm so pissed off, right? Can't smoke properly. But democracy can turn into the tyranny of the majority. It can turn into the tyranny of the majority and subjugating a minority of people. That's the problem, right? Tyranny can be of the majority against a small minority. And I saw this Danielle Smith, I think her name is, in Alberta. She got elected. And I saw her statement she put out. She put out this, there's a video clip of it, and I'll play it actually. This is pretty awesome. I want you to see this. Give me a minute over here. Here we go. This is, I'm telling you, this is good stuff what she put out. And then of course she kind of backtracked a little bit because there's so much pushback, and I don't think she should have. But this is what I'm talking about. So there are people doing this out there, and I love it. I love to see it. I'm just, man, I don't have any more patience at all. I really, really don't have any more patience. Here we go. Here, watch this.
The community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms, and the community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms in the last year were those who made a choice not to be vaccinated. I don't think I've ever experienced a situation in my lifetime where a person was fired from their job, or not allowed to watch their kids play hockey, or not allowed to go visit a loved one in long-term care or hospital, or not allowed to go get on a plane to either go across the country to see family or even travel across the border. So they have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. That's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we have seen. I don't take away any of the discrimination that I've seen in those other groups that you mentioned, but this has been an extraordinary time in the last year in particular. And I want people to know that I find that unacceptable, that we are not going to create a segregated society on the basis of a medical choice. The community that faced the most restrictions on their...
There you go. It's going back to the beginning now. But yeah, that's it. You know, I saw this and I was like, this is amazing. This is great. You know, and I'll tell you what, I'll be honest over here, right? I haven't seen Pierre Poilievre come out and say anything like this to this level. I saw this video clip where he was asked about Tamara Lich, and he just kind of did the political dance, and you know, he danced around the subject, and he didn't come out hard. I mean, what is this? You know, what's happening exactly? That's what I want to know. What is happening exactly? Let me see over here. We got, then she put out this clarification. I was going to do a video on this at 2 p.m. yesterday when I saw this. I saw it immediately, and I'm just like, you ever get, you know what I mean, where you just don't, you know, you don't care anymore. But where you're like, I'm just yeah.
Go, no, go ahead. Finish your thought there.
Well, where you just want to live your life and do your thing. You know what I mean? You just do your thing.
For sure. Yeah, man. I mean, I live out in the country, you know, like not everybody, you know, has that luxury to, you know, have property and no neighbors. You know, I'm one of the lucky few. So, you know, I value it. I value just being able to do your own thing and not being bothered.
Yeah, that's it, man. Not to be bothered. Let's take a look at the chat. They're all bought off. True story, says Carl Vincent. Snakes and doggies. Pee Wee Polly picked a pack of pickled peppers. Yeah, that's it, man. And I saw these people too. A lot of these people. Okay, and I don't want to get into political partisan debates. Okay, I'm not for Maxime Bernier. I'm not for Pierre Poilievre. I'm not for Danielle Smith. I love what she came out here and she said this in her speech. I love when Pierre Poilievre goes out there and he speaks saying, look, enough is enough, talking about economics and all that kind of stuff. But man, talk, it's like I can't get super excited from talk anymore. Let's put it that way. And then she puts out this statement over here. Yes, I'm just going to check. Is this okay? It's still resuming shortly. It's not alive yet. Yesterday, I made comments regarding the discrimination unvaccinated individuals have suffered through over the past 2 years. My intention was to underline the mistreatment of individuals who chose not to be vaccinated and were punished by not being able to work, travel, or in some cases see loved ones. I want to be clear that I did not intend to trivialize in any way the discrimination faced by minority communities. You know, when people say it's minority communities, they say, oh, you're part of a minority. I say, listen, brother, there's 1 billion Indians. I'm not a minority. There's 1 billion Indians on this planet. I want to be clear that I did not intend to trivialize in any way the discrimination faced by minority communities and other persecuted groups here in both here in Canada and around the world, or to create any false equivalencies to the terrible historical blah 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 blah. Oh my lord, we need to actively work together as Albertans and Canadians to end all discrimination against all minority communities. You know what? If you travel around the world, there's no discrimination in Canada because I'm not discriminated because of my skin color. My wife's not discriminated because she came from Rwanda. All right, we're not discriminated for all those reasons. We can be anything we want to be in these countries. My children, they don't even know what they are. They just know they're human beings. That's what they know. That's what they know. And I tell them, you're Canadians. You're not this, you're not that. You're not part of a minority community. Holy. I don't want to continue the animosity, okay? I don't want to continue these tribal hate fests. I don't care. I want to live my life. And you can do that in Canada. You can do that already until if you decide not to take a medical procedure. Oh, ooh la 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 la, that's it. Then, all of a sudden, my daughter can't go to
The
university.
commission is reconvened. La commission reprend.
I'm going to take a leak.
Second-class citizen if you don't take the jab.
OK, merci. Thank you. On va reprendre on va commencer avec les associations et avec aucun ordre d'importance. Vous devez tirer aucune conclusion du choix. Là. On va commencer par le CCLDL, CAD, CLA, une série d'organismes qui sont ici. Monsieur Del Biggio.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, my name is Greg Del Biggio. On behalf of the Canadian Council of Criminal Defence Lawyers, the CCCDL, and the Criminal Lawyers Association, the CLA, my co-counsel Colleen McEwen and I are pleased to have the opportunity to participate in this commission. The CCCDL is a national council made up of senior criminal defence lawyers. The council has existed since 1992 and has representatives in every province and Nunavut. The purpose of the CCCDL is to enhance, support, and improve criminal justice throughout Canada. The Criminal Lawyers Association has existed since 1971 and serves as the voice of criminal defence lawyers in Ontario and has over 1,800 members in Ontario, across Canada, and the United States. The CLA aims to educate, promote, and represent its membership on criminal law and constitutional law issues impacting defense lawyers and clients. Together, the CCCDL and the CLA have experience and expertise in bringing close scrutiny to the justification and use of government and police powers. The Emergencies Act should be used sparingly or as a last resort, and only where credible evidence justifies its use.
All right, what did I miss?
The public's confidence and trust
Not too
in the
much.
fair and proper administration of
Who's
law
this chap?
demands this. During the evidence portion of the commission, the CCCDL and the CLA hope to assist the commission in understanding those facts which served as foundations for the important decisions that were made by police and elected officials, and in understanding the ways in which those decisions considered and impacted the interests and protected rights of individuals. The evidentiary portion is important for transparency and accountability, and for ensuring that the use of the Emergencies Act was consistent with the maintenance of the rule of law and the Charter of Rights. We are also eager to participate in the policy portion of the Commission because beyond the specifics of this particular use of the Emergencies Act, it is important that policy issues be considered so that the balance between the exercise of government power, the exercise of police powers, and protected individual rights can be considered from a broader national perspective and, where necessary, improved. Thank you.
Who is this guy? Who is that dude?
Next, I'd like to
He was
call
a
on the,
lawyer for
Union of,
other lawyers, I
British
believe.
Columbia
It's
Indian
kind of how he
Chiefs.
described himself.
Look at this room. I love this. We're going to get justice here. Let's hear it. Justice.
It looks like a fifth grade
My name
classroom.
is Cheyenne Arnold Cunningham, and I am here representing the Union of BC Indian Chiefs alongside my colleagues Megan Berlin, who is in attendance virtually.
They were
and
impacted
Mary
by the
Ellen
convoy.
Triple-Lafond, who will be in attendance on future hearing dates.
BC Indian Chiefs. I got to hear
As
from the
mentioned this morning,
how is
the
this?
Commission is mandated with examining and
British
assessing
Columbia?
the basis for the Government of Canada's decision to declare a public order emergency and the appropriateness and effectiveness of the government's responses to the Freedom Convoy situation. As a representative
Thank you,
for
Inrise
Indigenous
Movement.
governments,
Appreciate it.
and the only type of such representative who has been granted full standing in this inquiry, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs has a direct interest in the accountability of Canadian governments for their actions. All exercises of emergency, colonial, Canadian government powers fundamentally impact the relationship between First Nations and the
I don't want to
government.
hear about colonialism,
First
please.
Nations with their
I
inherent
really, nah,
right to
dude. I
self-government
don't care. Leave me alone.
and other protected rights
Okay.
under Section 35
No, I don't wanna hear
of the
about it.
Canadian
You
know-
colonialists. You
Yeah.
colonialist Canadians.
Nah,
The Union of
man.
BC Indian Chiefs is a representative of
And you're gonna
Indigenous
get-
governments and First Nations in British
You're gonna
Columbia.
get a lot of this from me. I'm sorry.
Purpose is to
I'm a
support
salty
and,
I'm a
promote the
salty
effect-
cracker now.
the
You know what I mean?
efforts of
Rose
First
black
Nations in
pilled to the
BC
max.
to affirm and defend
I
their
don't-
title and rights.
Like I
The
don't.
Union of BC Indian Chiefs
Colonialism.
has a unique role in
Colonialism.
British Columbia and Canada
2022. We're talking about
Holy
colonialism.
shit.
and
Canada.
has
You know
extensive
what I mean?
expertise in government engagement and policy development in relation to, among other things, government accountability, policing, human rights, anti-racism, and the rights of Indigenous
Anti-racism.
peoples
You want
generally.
anti-racism? Then
With
let
over
me
40 years
let
of
me and everybody
experience,
like
the Union
me
of BC
have their
Indian
jobs,
Chiefs
be able
is
to go to the
uniquely
hospitals,
positioned
be able to
to share
visit
how
their loved
government's
ones,
decision-making is
send my
connected
daughter to
the
school.
Indigenous people's concerns
Okay,
relating to
let me
the
send my.
Convoy
How about
process
this? How about all these
and to
natives? You
address
let
the
your kids go to
appropriateness and
university
effectiveness
without having a
of
medical
government's
procedure
response
put
in
upon you
relation
by
to
the
those concerns.
colonials. How about that? Whatever
will be
friggin'
important for the
terminology you want to use,
Commission to
colonials.
understand
Who's been
Indigenous
part of a colonialism
about
today in the
the
last
events
50
leading
years?
up
That's what I
to
want
the
to know.
Me.
proclamation of an emergency,
We
as
have
well as
Grant
the
V
use
in the
of
chat says
Emergencies
we're all
Act
getting pretty
itself.
salty these days, Ro.
I know.
It's also
Ah,
extremely
man, I'm
important
just.
for the Commission to understand and consider the unique contexts, histories, experiences of the diverse and distinct First Nations and Indigenous peoples across Canada.
No, I hate to say it.
This includes a
But I don't
consideration of the
actually care,
historic and
okay? That's the
ongoing
reality.
oppression
No, I'm
of
serious.
Indigenous peoples
I don't
by
care.
the
You're
of Canadian
literally
law
trampling
and
on
policy.
Indigenous
No, I don't
rights.
care.
right
I don't
now,
care
Ro.
anymore. I don't
Literally
care.
trampling
I don't care
on the
about.
souls
The Indian Act.
and the lived
Land
experience
displacement
I don't
of
care.
these Indigenous people.
I just don't care.
The
I don't
residential
care
sources
about
of
any racial group. I
The
care about
60s
human rights. I care about people.
missing and
I
murdered
care about my
Indigenous
countrymen. That's what I care about. And of
Systemic
course, that includes
racism.
country women.
The increasingly
Because,
disproportionate
that's what it
incarceration
means.
rates of Indigenous peoples. The increasingly disproportionate
I don't
rates
ca- I don't
of
care
Indigenous
about
Brady
youth
says-
and children
Oh,
in
sorry.
Canada's
Ro.
child
No, I
Kay
just-
Brady
yeah,
says
go ahead.
pan equal colonialism.
and the
That's
assault
true.
and apprehension of Indigenous land defenders who seek to protect their ancestral lands and sacred resources.
You know what you should do?
For example,
Okay, it's like the
logging,
Indians from India. What do you do?
commercial
My
gas
father's
exploration,
family.
and hydro
My
dams.
grandfather was illiterate.
State
Okay, my
research
father's
efforts
job
in
was to pick up
several
dead
local
animals.
daily
That's what it was.
experiences.
When he was 13 years old, him and his brother were moved to England, and he had never met his father. And then they renamed him. His father renamed him when he saw him. He said, "Your new name is this."
Across Canada.
His name was something like Moti Lal or something, and he renamed him to Hansraj, which is like a king's name, so that he could be, you know, you're going to be something great. You're going to be something. We're going to make sure you are. You're going to learn. You're going to educate. You're going to be strong. You're going to be tough. Put all this victimhood. I don't teach my kids that they're victims. Okay, I don't teach them that, you know, the British came in and they partitioned and, you know, Gandhi was a part of that and this guy did this and the rest. Yeah, sure. I've told them before this has happened in India. Just like, the Irish were slaves and, the potato famine, they were starved out and the rest. But I don't care about all that. I care about the future and I care about now. And now you make what you are today. You make what you are today. I don't care about the past. I don't care about any of them. And I'll tell you what, my third cousins in India, they got land. They got more freedom than I got right here, right now. All right, that's the reality of the situation.
That the government's emergency powers will be used appropriately moving forward, as they may be exercised against First Nations and Indigenous peoples.
Yeah, well, that's true right there. I'll tell you that much, what you just said right there.
Thank you.
If you're not careful, these emergency powers, war measures powers, can be used against anybody at any time. So you better not be voting and hoping and allowing the government to overstep and overreach.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner.
Morning.
My name is Jason Beachman, and I'm here today as counsel for the National Crowdfunding and Fintech Association.
Huh?
The NCFA is Canada's largest industry association, representing crowdfunding platforms and fintech startups. The NCFA sought the right to participate in these hearings so that it could provide a voice for these emerging industries and technologies. We are here to comment on the fact-finding and policy review functions of the Commission with respect to two issues set out in the terms of reference. First, the impact of domestic and foreign funding, including donation crowdfunding platforms. And second,
here we
the
go.
impact, role, and sources of misinformation and disinformation, including the use of social media. Our hope is that through this process, the Commission will strive to understand whether and how misinformation and disinformation about crowdfunding and cryptocurrency influence the decision to make orders under the Emergencies Act that targeted and restricted the use of these technologies.
Okay, so they're worried about their own pockets, saying disinformation, misinformation around crowdfunding, fintech, Bitcoin, crypto, the rest. We have been maligned, our group has been maligned, we will be able to make less money.
Crowdfunding have been permanently crystallized in extensive regulation of the industry under the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act.
Okay, so what he's talking about there is Fintech. There's been a lot more regulations around this. You got Know Your Customer. You got Fintech, who now has deep connections or regulations around any cryptocurrency. All those. This was all around the Give, Send, Go and GoFundMe time when those guys were brought.
To waive the obligation of due process and to confer and consult. The use of extraordinary powers under the Emergencies Act raises questions. Questions of whether the ends justify the means. In the case of crowdfunding and fintech, the end result.
Come on, brother.
Excuse me, it was an interruption.
Don't worry about
Spit it out, brother.
In the case of
crowdfunding is a real.
The end result is that laws were passed without public scrutiny or due process.
Laws were passed.
This presents a cautionary tale for Canadians, and we will all benefit from scrutiny by this Commission into whether it is appropriate to deploy these extraordinary powers when the end result may be the subtle and not so subtle erosion of the rule of law.
Yeah, okay, he's right.
The NCFA looks forward to the Commission's efforts to examine these issues and to the opportunity to participate in that process. Thank you.
Even though everybody is really worried about their own interests, whether it's the Native Chiefs or the Fintech, crowdfunding people, I mean, they're right. It is civil liberties are being eroded completely, and this stuff can be used against the Native Chiefs and all them.
My name is Nini Jones, and I am here along with my colleague Lauren Pierce. We are both on Zoom today, and my colleague Jen Del Riccio, who is present in person. And together we represent the National Police Federation. The National Police Federation is the exclusive bargaining agent for approximately 20,000 RCMP members and reservists below the rank of inspector. The RCMP, and by extension the NPF's members, were the source of the largest police response to the convoy and the blockades in Ottawa, as well as in every other location throughout Canada, including the BC occupation, the Alberta occupation, Manitoba, as well as assisting in Windsor. In other words, the RCMP were the police officers charged with responding to the situations created by the convoy across the country. The NPF intends to participate with a particular focus on the scope and the limits of our members' policing authority and their policing jurisdiction. And we are particularly interested in the divided jurisdiction and the issues that arose in the city of Ottawa, where police responses came from the OPP, the Ottawa Police, and the NPF's members employed by the RCMP, along with the Parliamentary Protective Services. Those are the areas of particular interest for the NPF, and we look forward to assisting the Commission and the Commissioner with those issues as they arise through this proceeding. Thank you so much.
All right, so basically this is just introduction about their union.
If I could now call on the Canadian Constitution Foundation.
Oh, cool. All right,
and
CCF.
Professor Alford
This should be interesting.
Yes, go ahead.
He's basically going to tell us
thank
that
you.
Canadian Constitution
Good morning,
is
Commissioner.
toilet paper.
My name is Sujit Chaudhry.
Oh, I like this guy. I know this guy.
I am co-counsel for the Canadian Constitution Foundation. My co-counsel is Janani Shanmuganathan.
Sorry, what?
We are both on Zoom, although we do hope to attend some of the proceedings in person.
Jigani,
cool. The CCF has been granted standing jointly with Professor Alford. I would ask.
No, this guy's good.
We reserved a minute at the end of our remarks for him.
I like this guy, Sujit Chaudhry. He's.
That you recognize.
I was planning on making a video, never got around to it about this guy.
Well, if I could just interrupt, there's one grant of standing.
Okay, anyways, basically this dude right over here, he is one of their main guys, super educated, you know, he's been at Harvard, this, that, UT, law, maximum, every single piece of accreditation you could put behind your name, Sujit Chaudhry. I don't know if he's Pakistani or Indian, whatever. But this guy really knows his stuff inside out, man. And he's been pushing, you know, kind of breaking it all down in these videos on that CCF channel, right? That's the Canadian Constitutional Foundation channel, here and there. And he's been heading a lot of this up. So I'm interested to see what he says.
Mr. Alford, or you, or Ms. Shanmuganathan.
Shanmuganathan.
But I don't want it to break down into different parties. There are many other organizations that are sharing a standing, and they've all cooperated to have one presentation. So with that caveat, Mr. Chaudhry,
I'll show you who this guy is.
You can go ahead on this exceptional basis today.
And thank you, Commissioner. And we did check in with Commission Counsel before we decided to proceed this way, and so we appreciate your forbearance in this exceptional circumstance. Commissioner Rouleau, I have 4 points to make in my introductory remarks. The first is that I would like to introduce the CCF. The CCF is a legal charity which is dedicated to defending fundamental freedoms in Canada, particularly the freedom to think, believe, and express controversial or dissenting ideas and opinions. The CCF would like to publicly express its appreciation to you, Commissioner Rouleau, for granting it standing before the Commission. Second, the CCF sought standing to assist the Commission because it will address questions that are core to our mandate. The emergency proclamation and emergency measures regulations severely restricted the rights to freedom of expression, assembly, and association. The Emergency Economic Measures Order chilled freedom of expression by deterring donations to organizations opposed to the public order emergency, such as the CCF. For the CCF, the fundamental question is whether the condition in the final clause of Section 3 of the Emergencies Act was met, that the Ottawa protests and border blockades could not be effectively dealt with under any law, any other law of Canada, federal, provincial, or municipal. This clause codifies the requirement that the Emergencies Act is a last resort which can only be triggered when all other legal tools fall short. Third, although the Commission will necessarily focus on recent events, a sense of history should frame how it approaches this task. The Emergencies Act is a successor to the discredited War Measures Act, which was abused during the FLQ crisis in Quebec. The Emergencies Act, especially the last resort clause, was drafted to ensure that the act could never be used by a federal government against its political opponents. For 34 years, the Emergencies Act was never used. The public order emergency of 2022 was a historic first. But now that the glass has been broken on the act, it can be used again. The act was used by this government against individuals protesting vaccine mandates, but a future government of a different political stripe could use the act in response to protests against pipelines or climate change. When the Commission asks hard questions about the act's use in 2022, the Commission must also focus on the act's potential misuse in the future and protect the right to protest, parliamentary democracy, and federalism. And what the Commission says matters not just to Canada, but globally, where the use of emergency powers is on the rise. The world will be watching our work. Fourth, the CCF would like to thank Commissioner Rouleau and the Commission Council for taking on this enormous task of public service in an extremely tight timeline on an issue of singular and momentous significance to Canada. We look forward to assisting you in any way possible. Thank you.
All right, that's Sujit Chaudhary. Really, really good guy.
He said some good stuff.
Oh, yeah, man.
Mr. Alford?
Yeah, he talked kind of about how it infringed on the rights of people to donate to who they wanted to donate, including his organization, CCF. And he talked about the Emergencies Act being used once. It'll probably be used again and misused.
In its opening statement, the Government of Canada stated it had a reasonable basis for declaring a public order emergency. Unfortunately, a reasonable basis is not necessarily a legal, let alone a constitutional basis for assuming unprecedented and destructive emergency powers. I would like to briefly quote in part the correct legal standard in these circumstances for threats to the security of Canada that constitute a public order emergency. Quote, activities within or relating to Canada directed toward or in support of the threat or use of acts of serious violence. Not tied to serious acts of violence in some fashion, not in conjunction with or somehow associated in some fashion with, rather directed toward or in support of the threat or use of acts of serious violence. We are here to receive in public the evidence from the Government of Canada related to the correct legal standard for the proclamation of a public order emergency. And the rule of law requires nothing less. Thank you, Commissioner.
I don't understand any of that. You get any of that, Pan? It's legalese.
No, not a thing.
Call on
It's
the,
legalese, man.
Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
Oh, cool. CLA, I think. CCLA. That's right, the CCLA. These, man, I got new respect, man, for all the constitutional lawyers out there. I told my son, my 11-year-old, that he's got to be a constitutional lawyer. He's let's see.
My job to be the comic relief. So, good morning, Mr. Commissioner. Good morning, Commission Council, members of the public. My name is Kira Zwiebel, and I, along with my co-counsel Eva Krajeska, who is participating remotely, are representing the Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
Cool.
We will be participating primarily remotely starting next week, but do anticipate attending in person for portions of the coming weeks. And we look forward to participating in the fact-finding role of the Commission and expect to play a particularly active role in the Commission's policy phase and forward-looking functions. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association, or CCLA, is a national, independent, non-governmental organization that is dedicated to the protection and promotion of fundamental rights and freedoms in
Okay, so
Canada.
here's the thing, right?
The CCLA has
With
been
all
engaged
these
in this
different
important work
constitutional
since its
civil
founding in
liberties groups,
1964,
if you
and
look
is known
at
for
them,
taking principled stands on
they take
difficult
stands for
issues
any
that
kind of
require
freedom.
reconciling fundamental rights with other competing interests.
But the thing is that if you look at some of these
The
groups,
Commission is aware
CCLA
that
and the rest,
CCLA has sought judicial review of the decision to declare a public order emergency and argues that the Act's legal threshold was not met and that the emergency orders that were put in place by the government breached constitutional rights in a manner that was not reasonable or justified. The CCLA's interest in the Commission's work comes from our concern about the use of emergency powers that circumvent the parliamentary processes and allow the executive branch to rule by fiat.
yes,
It is a concern
yes.
that has been around for as long as the organization has existed, and although the excesses of the War Measures Act are now well understood, during the FLQ crisis itself, the CCLA was one of the lone voices critical of the use of that law. As a result of that experience, the organization participated actively in the process that led to the passage of the current Emergencies Act. In particular, the CCLA encouraged Parliament to build meaningful oversight and accountability mechanisms into the Act and to require a high and judicially reviewable threshold for declaring a national emergency.
I mean, come on, we know this.
There are many issues that the Commission will be examining which are central to CCLA's work, including the lawful scope of the right to protest, the role of police in facilitating protests while protecting public safety, the relationship between policing authorities, civilian oversight bodies, and government actors, and the surveillance of those involved in dissenting social movements. More broadly, the CCLA's interest in the Commission's work goes to the core of the organization's mandate, protecting the rights and freedoms of Canadians and demanding transparency and accountability from our governments. The CCLA views the Commission as an instrumental part of achieving the goals of transparency and accountability, and our participation in the Commission's proceedings will be aimed at supporting those goals. Thank you.
Okay, so we're doing a lot of intros. As Alex Diet says, that ain't no hobbit. That's a shaved dwarf. Check out those biceps. Let's see. We got the Democracy Fund.
Freedom and JCCF.
Democracy Fund and
Coalition.
JCCF. All right, cool. This should be good. Let's see. I like all these. I'm a fan of all these constitutional groups. I am. But I really don't see any effect happening from this. But at least it's going to expose. Let's see what they got to say.
Introductions of ourselves and our organizations, and should come in well under the time allotted for a single party.
I won't repeat the comments I made earlier. I think you're well aware that from now on it will be one presentation rather than three. And for today, I'll make the exception I made.
Okay, let me show you a little bit over here.
Case. Go ahead.
Absolutely, thank you very much. I'm Rob Kittredge. I represent the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and since 2010, the Justice Center has defended the fundamental rights of Canadians through pro bono litigation. A team of Justice Center lawyers were on the ground in Ottawa for the duration of the protests here, and our lawyers have been and continue to be involved in much of the related litigation. We look forward to continuing to defend the rights and freedoms of Canadians here at this inquiry and holding the government to account on its invocation of the Emergencies Act. It likely comes as no surprise that we view the invocation of the Act to have been an unjustified infringement on the fundamental rights of Canadians. I'm joined here today by my co-counsel, James Manson, and my co-counsel, Hatem Kir, is following online. We will each be here in person at various times throughout the inquiry, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues at the Democracy Fund and Citizens for Freedom.
Okay.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Antoine Dailly, counsel together with Amanda Armstrong to Citizens for Freedom, representing a not-for-profit organization representing the interests and perspectives of the peaceful demonstrators in Windsor, Ontario. We are here to assist the Commission in fulfilling its mandate, particularly its fact-finding function as it relates to the protests that occurred in Windsor, which culminated in the widely publicized demonstration near the Ambassador Bridge, and the various corresponding responses by the various levels of government.
This is like
and law enforcement.
The People's Front for Judean Liberty, the Judean Front for the People's Liberty, the Judean Liberty Front for the People's Freedom Liberty. Just
we'll be finding the facts.
Right? Oh, man. Man. All right, it's just intro day. It's intro. Everyone's going to get an introduction. On with this.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Honor, and I am the Litigation Director for the Democracy Fund. The Democracy Fund is a registered charity and a civil liberties organization. As you've heard, we're sharing standing with the JCCF and with Citizens for Freedom. Our interest in this inquiry arises from our legal work. In February of 2022, we sent lawyers to Ottawa and to Windsor to provide demonstrators with legal information about their rights when protesting, as well as the limitations of those rights. Around the same time, we were granted intervener status as a friend of the court at the Superior Court of Justice in Windsor over the Ambassador Bridge injunction proceeding. Currently,
Okay, we got Conquest Comics, and he says, is anything going to happen, or are a bunch of suits going to talk at each other, then cash your government paychecks? Hold on, let me get my dog out here. Hold on one second. Let me bring him in here. He wants to come in.
Of others who've been charged under the Quarantine Act or provincial offenses related to the pandemic. We've also brought applications before Superior Courts and the Federal Court of Canada, challenging laws related to the pandemic. Our objective is to participate in the fact-finding process of this inquiry, particularly as it relates to uncovering the truth about why the federal government invoked a public order emergency and how they used their powers. From our perspective, the government did not meet the requisite legal grounds to invoke a public order emergency for the same reasons you heard from Counsel for the Freedom Corps. It follows that the extraordinary measures the government invoked were therefore inappropriate and indeed outside their jurisdiction. Our questions and our submissions will focus on these central issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I understand there are three other parties to the proceedings who have, in some cases, more limited involvement and interest in the proceedings, either for mostly
Okay, so we got a lot of introductions.
Policy end.
Let me take a look at the chat over here.
Present today, either in person or by video.
No legitimate evidence was presented for the EMA or lockdowns. Throw all sitting MPs in jail. Don't enact it again. Then move on to individual trials to unravel the criminality, says DC. Not a bad idea. When did guidelines and recommendations and policy overrule the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, says Nova. It's a great question. Jonathan Legthigh, imagine these people having SEX. They'd spend 3 hours on foreplay and then fall asleep. Exactly.
I want to
Sleeping Giant, the real SHIT is going on in the background.
Parties for the assistance that they have given the Commission to date, and for what I hope will be continued assistance. Anyone who had the illusion that this would be easy and uncontroversial, I think the presentations have started to lay out some of the differences and issues.
I saw some of the, I saw someone in the chat talk about moving to Alberta.
Is eager to take on.
Let me see over here.
Ça nous fait certainement plaisir d'avoir tous ces différentes parties qui ont le statut de.
I can't find it now. There's a fellow saying, I used to regret going to Alberta, but now I'm happy about it.
Des points de vue, mais tous les points de vue sont bienvenus pour essayer de.
Uh-oh, he's gone French on us.
Avec tous les
problèmes,
les questions, pour en arriver à une solution. Et la Commission est
the Commission is very happy
de relever le défi.
to pick up the challenge.
Brief introduction of the parties. I think we'll now turn to the beginning of what I will call the evidentiary phase, and the first is more through the presentation, as you've heard, as I understand it, of the various reports.
I've got Future Now. Ro, we met several times. I sold my house in Gatineau 2 months ago and left for the West. Good for you, brother. Future Now.
The next step.
Move out here, Ro. Recently moved to Millwood's part of Edmonton, far better than the other side of the city.
I would ask our Senior Commission Counsel, Daniel Shepard, to present and deduce into evidence
I'm thinking
an
about
overview
that.
report on the emergence of COVID-19 and the various public health measures implemented in Canada in response to it.
I'm just so stuck. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I have a mental problem that I can't stop rebelling against these injustices. I think, Pan, we got the same problem, brother.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
I know. I just can't. I can't help it. I want to shake it off. That's why I'm so angry. I want to just stop, but I can't.
Mr. Commissioner, parties, members of the public, good morning. My name is Daniel Shepard. I am Senior Commission Counsel with the Public Order Emergency Commission. Today, we will be introducing into evidence 3 overview reports, and we anticipate that additional overview reports will be put into evidence in the days and weeks to follow. The first is a report on the COVID-19 pandemic and public health responses. Next slide, please. Because we're going to be spending some time today putting overview reports into evidence, I'd like to take a moment to discuss with members of the public what an overview report is and how it works within the Commission. You have already heard that the timelines that the Commission is working under are tight, and that not every witness that the Commission might hear from will in fact be called. There are large bodies of evidence that exist, often in writing, and entire topics that need to be explored by the Commission, but it would be impracticable to call live evidence.
It's like a college presentation. It's a problematic post, right?
Previous commissions of inquiry have adopted the procedure of overview reports, documents created by commission staff that collect, collate, and summarize large bodies of information into documents that may be more or less concise, so that they can be reviewed by the commissioner, the parties, and the public to understand a particular area of relevance to the commission.
Overview report.
The Public Order Emergency Commission has adopted this procedure, and for those who are interested in technical details about how overview reports work, reference can be made to Rules 41 through 45 of the Commission's revised Rules of Practice and Procedure. I've mentioned that overview reports are created by Commission Council.
I'm surprised more people aren't.
After they are prepared, they have been circulated to the parties, and we've invited their comment. And for those parties who have provided comment to the overview reports so far, I would like to express the thanks of the Commission.
Okay. Something interesting he said here. I just want to pause for a second here. Well, not pause, but
in finalized overview reports.
Well, he's going on overview reports. He talks about not everybody who is registered to be a witness will be called.
Are high-quality documents before the commissioner.
That's a very important point there.
Once overview reports
More selectivity,
right,
and are introduced, they do become evidence before the commission that may be relied upon by the commissioner and the parties. However, it is important to note that simply because an overview report has been prepared by Commission Counsel does not mean that the commissioner necessarily will accept its contents. Rather, an overview report is, like all other evidence, information before the commissioner that he may or may not choose to rely on.
It's like being in school again, you know what I mean?
This means that parties are free to disagree with the content of
an overview
report.
That was a great presentation.
And are entitled to challenge
We got Nova. Thank you for the donation. Trudeau will have a false flag given to distract from this and his questioning. Conquest Comics, what is the desired ideal outcome from this? That's a great question. What is the desired ideal outcome from this?
Through the ordinary process.
So the whole people accountable, but do we really think that will happen? Probably not.
Yeah.
With that general introduction out of the way, I would now like to present COM-OR2, the COVID-19 pandemic and public health responses.
COM-OR 000000002
about the COVID-19 pandemic around the world and in Canada. The Commission anticipates that a great deal of evidence that it will be hearing will be made in reference to the pandemic
this
and
guy
public health measures
is going to turn me into an alcoholic. This guy. You know what?
This overview report
Stick with
attempts
coffee,
to provide context so that when those discussions take place,
Don't
and
let
that
him
evidence
drive you
is
to
heard,
drink.
the commissioner, the parties, and the public have a factual background to understand what public health measures were in fact in place and what statements about the current public health system around the world and the pandemic were at different points in time. It therefore provides information not only about the pandemic itself and about public health measures, it also provides information about vaccine development and particular measures adopted by Canadian governments and different jurisdictions with respect to COVID vaccines. Next slide. The overview report contains essentially 4 components. The first, which is found at paragraphs 1 through 39 of the overview report, deals specifically with the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. It does so in 2 ways. First, it provides a summary overview of international information about the spread of COVID-19 around the globe. And then second, provides background information about the emergence of COVID-19 in Canada. Next slide. On the international side of things, this overview report provides information about the original emergence of a novel coronavirus.
This is like, get a point across.
This is like my mother-in-law, right? My mother-in-law, when my 3rd kid was born, I got 5 now. Here she is, and I said my wife had just given birth, right? And she had a perfect pregnancy, perfect birth, and she was walking around 8 hours after. Okay, she's in the kitchen. And I said, "Yeah, babe, just can you give me a glass of water?" That was it. My mother-in-law went ballistic. She gets up from the table. She's like, "Mais y'a quoi? She just gave birth, and you're already asking her, ordering her around to do things for you." And she then proceeds.
You're supposed to get her a glass of water.
Right. She then gives me an overview report of every single thing I've ever done wrong since she's known me since 1999.
Oh, wow.
1999 until now, and she goes through this list. And it's an overview report, man. It's
just Ontario and British Columbia, and the territory of Nunavut, which was spared infections until later in 2020. The overview report notes that most provinces began to be impacted with infections in late February through mid-March. This overview report also outlines when each province and territory first declared a state of emergency under a variety of public health and emergency management statutes in respect of COVID-19. You'll note from the slide that each of these jurisdictions declared some form of emergency throughout March of 2020.
An unofficial observer had a home birth and served egg rolls right after. Wow, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
The second part of this overview report, which is found at paragraphs 40 through 108,
hold on a second,
we term as the initial public health measures.
Yeah, we got Prayers of Angels says, "You're a bit of an ass."
Oh.
Spanning pages 16 through 50 of the overview report. This is a lengthy section, but notwithstanding its length, it's important for Commission Council to emphasize this is not a comprehensive list of every public health measure that was implemented within Canada. Rather, it is limited in a couple of different ways. First, this overview report focuses on public health measures that were adopted from the early declarations of emergency in March 2020 up until the point in time when COVID vaccines began to be approved for distribution and marketing in Canada.
I mean, this is literally we know what happened. We lived through the last 2 years.
It focuses almost exclusively
on
public health measures adopted by governments at the provincial and territorial level. Notably, it does not address public health measures adopted by other levels.
We got Miss Laubry. Speak over that guy. Can't stand listening to him. Tells more stories while he's blabbing. Yeah.
Finally, even within those confines,
all right. I don't know.
Does not attempt to outline
Bro, this is going to be a long live stream, says Robin Kirk. Right? Hail sister.
That would be
I know.
It's only day one.
It's day one of 2 months. Okay?
Oh boy, here we go.
Put this in context, in Ontario,
I'm going to be a friggin'.
where I live,
want to be a shell of a man after this is over.
COVID-19 pandemic, the provincial government adopted over 200 orders in council.
Actually, Tom Morazzo is going to be in town here, or he's already in town. Maybe we can get him on to stream with us and we can look at the overview reports together. Let's see.
That'd be fun. Because he might speak on this.
He is, yeah.
Correct.
He's set to speak here, yeah, man. He's set to speak.
Okay.
We're gonna see.
Adopted broadly throughout Canada.
We got Earth-inspired arts, brothers Rowan Pan. You make life more bearable. Hail, sister.
This includes restrictions on travel.
Thanks for tuning in.
Barriers to entering provinces and territories. Or requirements to
Thanks for showing this sort of, says Alan Livingston. I'm overviewed out. I bet his wife is proud. What a joke this whole thing is. Wrong is wrong. Illegal is illegal. Let's get this show on the road.
Both in terms of public assemblies and private gatherings, both indoors and outdoors.
Okay, hold on a second here. Interesting. We got JBRR. This guy's basically getting at the massive abuse of power in government was legal and necessary because of all the people who broke the law, did so together, and agreed it was necessary.
Measures that, while
We before we went on air, there was one guy that was speaking at this hearing, and he was talking about all the violence of the convoy. So don't be surprised if they start spinning that narrative again.
Oh yeah, they will.
Imposed on individuals
They want people to fall asleep as Christian patriots.
Next slide. The third portion of this overview report.
Well, that's the thing, right? Just because everybody's doing something doesn't make it right.
It is found in paragraphs 109 through 123 of the overview report.
Or at least tune out, says Christian Patriot.
Deals with two broad issues. First,
Urgent Richard of Montbleu says just segregate society. The idiots and non-idiots.
By Health Canada.
Yeah.
Second,
wish it was that easy.
Deals with the actual approvals that were in fact made and the vaccines that became available at different points in time for marketing.
Where's my kid? I need a coffee. Hey, tell Lars to make me a fresh ground coffee.
With respect to the drug approvals,
none of this
the overview
instant.
report discusses in very general terms how drug approval operates within
Tell him I want
Canada
fresh coffee. I want the beans ground right now by hand.
A regulation that is made
the good stuff.
The good stuff. I'm gonna need it. Let's go, Tom.
Under the Food and Drugs Act, however, the Minister of Health has the authority in Section 30.1 to make something referred to as an interim order. An interim order.
Since this guy has been on, we've lost like over 200 viewers.
Be good. I want to lose myself as a viewer.
No one wants to listen to this schmuck.
Yeah, I want to lose myself as a viewer. That's what I want to do.
I want to tune out.
Yeah.
Safety or the environment. The overview report discusses that on September 16th of 2020, the Minister of Health made one such interim order with respect to COVID-19 vaccines.
This is just what, going through every single act of legalese that they did to, to relinquish our rights to the dustbin of history. Is that what this is?
Contained a number of rules.
Thorough overview, interim orders. So what he's talking about here, okay? Our orders in council. You can just create, this is what I've come to realize now. That we just elect kings. That's what we do. For 4 years with orders in council and now with the Emergency Act, they effectively can do whatever they want for 4 years. So we elect temporary kings, maybe 4 years, maybe 7 years, maybe 8 years, maybe more. But there are kings at the time when we elect them. That's what we have here, because there's no real checks and balances.
Under the interim order, Health Canada allowed for rolling applications, permitting drug companies to provide initial clinical information at the time of an application, but to continue to provide additional information as the application was assessed.
Jonathan Legthigh. Bro, admit it. We live in a post-justice, post-truth world. No, I admit it, brother. I'm with you. I agree completely.
That permitted the importation of drugs and its positioning throughout Canada, so that in the event a vaccine were approved,
Conquest Comics, careful, Ro. That sounds like you're thinking that's never good for government.
At this point, I'd like to
Ro's definitely on a list.
On March 17th of 2021, the interim order expired. At that time, the Government of Canada made amendments to the food and drug regulations to incorporate some aspects of the interim order into the ordinary regulatory regime.
There you go. You're going emo. You're like emo Ro. It's like goth row. You're going to start cutting yourself like a teenage goth girl.
When approving drugs for use with COVID-19.
Oh, God.
The standard, in relevant part, was that the minister had to have
someone get a
evidence
screenshot.
to support the conclusion.
I'm just done with society, bro. Just done.
Tuning out.
To the uncertainties relating to the benefits and risks and the necessity of addressing.
This is Black Pill Row. He's just done.
Applying this standard.
Just done, bro.
Canada
Just done. Done with everything.
For use within Canada.
Done with Canada. Done with comics.
By today,
Just done.
there are currently 6 drugs.
Done
that
with
have
your
gone through
dog.
The approval process that began on December 9th of 2020 and most recently occurred on February 24th, 2022.
Go hang out with Chinglish, says Piscator.
Oh,
Right?
wow. Oh, yeah, Chinglish. Wow.
Yeah, man.
I think Chinglish is definitely a Fed.
The fourth and final section of this overview report deals with public health measures specifically related to vaccines, and it can be found at paragraphs 124 through 180 of the overview report. Next slide.
Max Chapman says you need a huge reefer and you'll be good to go.
Once again,
loosen
the
my
overview
beard,
report
loosen everything
does
up.
not mean to be entirely exhaustive. The purpose of this section of the overview report
There you
is to
go.
identify certain key public health measures that were specifically tied to individuals' vaccination status. The focus of this section of the overview report is on rules imposed by governments. Rules imposed by other types of actors, such as employers, of their own accord, are not.
He no longer
specifically
cares,
dealt with
folks.
in the
He's
overview
given up
report.
on life.
Much like the section dealing with early public health measures, the Commission has also focused on a particular subset of public health measures connected to vaccine status.
Steve in the chat says, Roe, you're a lunatic.
focused on
So is
access
Justin
to
Trudeau.
cases,
I like you more. You make me laugh.
requirements for
Justin
work,
makes me cry and puke.
and limits on travel and movement.
Uh-oh, he's got the shades on.
Next slide.
Here we go. This is Black Pill Row. He's just given up. It's a post-truth society. He's come to terms with that, and he says, F it all.
Ability to access a particular place, venue, or service, to their vaccine status, or their willingness to provide proof of their vaccine
This is a great overview.
The Commission notes that there were a range of different types.
Hey, thanks,
of public
man.
health
Mother of
measures
Drummer says, cool
adopted by
shades, dude.
different
Thanks, bro. These are
governments.
from Shoppers. I was,
So to
I
simply
don't know, maybe 2
provide,
years ago, I was
example
walking
to
by and I
show
saw
some
them
of
on
the
the rack.
ranges of
No,
options
Canadian Tire.
provided by
They're from Canadian
governments.
Tire, actually, yeah.
Alberta implemented something called the Restrictions Exemption Program in September of 2021. At this point in time, many types of businesses in Alberta were subject to particular forms of public health measures, such as masking requirements,
Nikki,
limits
make a loud bang when this guy's done. I'm putting my head down and taking a nap.
We'll wake you up.
Under the Restrictions Exemption Program,
Right?
You know what I'm going to do?
had an option.
I'm going to get up. I'm going
They
to
could
play with my
continue to
dog
operate
outside.
under the
I'm
pre-existing
going to keep the
And this
stream
guy'll
going.
still be talking.
Yeah,
He'll
I'm
still
gonna
be talking.
Right, I'm gonna keep the stream going, and I'm gonna watch the stream on my phone while I'm outside playing with the dog. And then if there's something interesting, I'll jump up and jump back up on the computer. You know what I mean? So we can talk a little
Qualifying
bit about it.
businesses were required to check vaccine status.
Because this
of
guy's
those
just going to
attempting
keep
access their
going
venues
and going
and to confirm
and
that
going.
individuals were fully vaccinated.
You look like a real scam Indian guru, lol, says Piscator.
In Ontario, pursuant to originally Regulation 645/21, though amended several times thereafter. Under this approach,
Maharishi
the government
Rowe.
of Ontario imposed mandatory obligations on
I
businesses
went and got a
to
bowl of
require that
stew. Oh
anyone
my God,
accessing their
he's
premises show
some
proof
mother's
of full
child.
vaccination.
Let's see.
Yeah,
There were no
they need to cut him
opt-outs
off.
that were
It's,
provided.
it's time.
Next slide.
Playing with the dogs, just starry light. No, you're going for a toke.
The
Whoa.
overview report
Nah,
also deals with a number of measures related to employment and work. In this area, governments adopted a range of different rules and measures that linked individuals'
tell my wife to
ability
bring the baby. Maybe
engage
I'll
in
play with the
certain
baby.
types of work to their
There you
vaccine
go.
status.
Yeah.
These
Hold your
measures were
baby
adopted
while this
in a
guy.
variety
Can you
of
say
Goes
this
on.
is our shitty?
Some were
Says
Hang
Nico.
on.
solely
Can you say this is our shitty?
others captured
Hello,
private sector
madam.
employers as well.
This is our city.
Some measures applied directly to workers. Other measures applied to employees.
For God's sake,
bro.
For God's sake, give him a booster, says Jack.
And the
Be for baby.
requirements
Yeah,
under
should I bring the baby?
different
Baby,
programs
at
vary
least the baby's
dramatically.
cute. You know what I mean? Baby makes
Sure.
me. Yeah, that makes me like my life when I see the baby.
Yeah, no, you can multitask. You know, you can spend time with your family and listen to these doofuses.
Solely by way
Right.
of example,
People lost their jobs because of the illegal mandate, says the H.A.I.L debate, right?
the Saskatchewan government adopted a pair of regulations. The Public Employers
I'm just gonna put one of my
COVID-19
kids in a
emergency
headlock. Actually, I'm gonna
regulations
take it out on
and
my
the
kids.
Employers COVID-19
Slaughter,
emergency regulations.
come here. I want to put you in a headlock.
You gonna teach him some pro wrestling?
Imposed an obligation on all public sector
I'm
employers.
gonna take it out on my kids.
Policies. These policies require
This is
their
what
take
your
it easy,
kid
take it
gets
easy.
for
Come here.
you having to
either
endure
be
this
vaccinated by a
overview.
particular point in time, or else to
Come here,
undergo
come here.
weekly
He's
testing.
gonna put a beating on
I
him.
was like,
Workplace.
this.
Oh, that's the rear naked choke. That's Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Hey, watch your language, dude.
No specific obligation
Yeah,
on employers.
just end it. End me. Just end it. End me.
Put him out of his misery.
Okay, I can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
Gotta tap. Gotta tap out.
Watch your language, you second shit. Get out of here. I'm gonna beat you up, man. I hear you guys swearing. I'm telling you, you're not allowed to swear. I told you this.
your hair.
This
I'm
policy
No
depressed.
swearing on the internet.
Fancy girl. Depressive.
I'm depressed, guys. I'm depressed, guys. That's it. I'm
This is
depressed.
depressed daddy.
Yeah, I'm depressed because the government. Here's my dog. Here, hold on. Come here. There's my dog.
Those individuals who chose
Make out with me.
not
Make
to
out with me.
See him,
by
Dad.
that
He's
date,
too dumb.
Black as
were
night.
pursuant to
Right, he's
policy
so black you can't
that
see
they
him.
could be
All you can
placed
see is his
on
nose.
leave of
Invisible.
Yeah.
absence with
All right, kids, just headlock me. I want to put me out of my misery.
Yes.
Just end it. He tapped. He tapped.
All right, get out of here. Get out of here. I'm busy.
While some provinces and other jurisdictions
Doing important internet stuff.
All right, all right.
individuals' vaccine status,
All right, hey, leave the dog alone.
rules in
Rock
this
it.
area
Place.
were
Hey,
implemented
place.
by the federal
Good.
government
Good place.
under a
Place,
range
my
of
good boy.
statutes,
My tuna
including
place.
transportation
Place, place,
legislation,
place.
such
Place.
as the
Hey.
Railway
They're
Safety
still trying to take him out.
Narcotics Act,
Place, my
also,
beautiful ones.
and
Hey,
of particular
Rock it.
significance to the evidence
Guys,
that we
you're annoying the
anticipate
dog.
hearing
Come
in
on.
this inquiry pursuant to the Quarantine
place.
Act.
I don't want him worked up, all right? You guys don't want to relax. Good shit,
As
man.
many may remember, for much of the early days of the
Guys, outta
COVID-19
here.
pandemic in
All you.
Canada,
Here's your glasses.
Canada's
Thanks.
borders were
I'm
largely
busy.
closed to foreign nationals who were attempting
Yeah.
to enter for optional or discretionary purposes. However, starting between August 9th and September 7th of 2021, Canada began to implement rules permitting individuals
about
to
that.
enter the country for optional
Good
or
kids.
discretionary purposes,
Nice. Yeah.
as long as they were able to show proof of being fully vaccinated. However,
Just
these-
put your
these
daddy
were
out of
rules
his
that
misery,
were
why don't you?
targeted
I know, right? There you go. My
optional
dog's
and
lying down
discretionary
again.
entry
Jesus.
into Canada. A different set of rules were applicable to individuals seeking to enter Canada for what might be termed as essential purposes. The
All right, where
rules
was
were
that?
contained in a variety of orders under the Quarantine Act.
PDS
and
says
were
this guy
often,
must have ran into the wrong
applicable
committee
in a
area.
somewhat complicated fashion. Together, the effect was that
Blah,
for
blah.
much
Did
of
I
the
miss
pandemic,
anything?
Commercial
No,
truckers were able
nothing.
to cross the U.S.-Canada border without regard to their vaccine status. Indeed, for much of the time they did so, there were no vaccines available. Those individuals crossing the border could be exempted from a variety of otherwise applicable measures under the Quarantine Act, such as the obligation to quarantine, as well as certain rules with respect to testing. Next slide, please. The Commission anticipates, however, that a series of changes that began to become announced in October and November of 2021 played a significant role in the circumstances
Nikki
that
says,
led to
seriously,
the
there's no time
proclamation
limit?
of a public
I don't
order
know. It doesn't
emergency.
look
Right?
Yeah, I mean.
Everyone
First,
else was
starting in
fairly
October of
succinct, but
2021,
not this
The
guy.
government of the
Yeah.
United States of America made an announcement that starting in January of 2020, all inbound foreign
Dan
nationals
Marshall, viewers are
entering the
dying
United
due to this
States via
feature.
land or ferry crossings would
Yeah.
be
We almost had to put
barred
Roe
from
out of his
entry
misery.
if they were not fully vaccinated. Even if they were entering for an essential purpose.
I'm no longer horny, says Terry.
A little over a month later, on November 19th of 2021,
that is a problem.
The Government of Canada announced that starting January 15th, 2022, new
Nancy
rules would
Graham,
apply
yeah, sure,
to
until someone is up who
under
makes
orders made
sense,
under the
then they'll
Quarantine
be out of
Act.
time.
The effect of
Right.
the announced changes.
Yeah, they already
was
said that
essential
they were going to
service
be kind of
providers,
selective
including
with
truck
who got
drivers,
to speak.
would have to be vaccinated to enter Canada in many circumstances. Unvaccinated foreign nationals would be barred from entry. Canadians and others that had a special legal entitlement to enter the country would still be allowed entry. However, they would no longer be exempted from particular
I just remember
public
when
health measures, such as the requirement
they
to
were letting in flights from China in around early 2020,
12th
and they said if
of
we stop it,
2022,
it'd be racism.
a spokesperson with the Canadian Border Services
Really?
Agency
Yeah.
announced that, in fact, unvaccinated Canadian commercial truckers would be allowed to enter Canada across international borders without the obligation to quarantine. However, the next day, on January 13th, the Government of Canada indicated that that statement was made in error.
Let me
The
see what my
government
wife
reiterated
thinks.
that the previously announced new measures at the border,
Oh my God, you're going to torture her?
apply,
Yeah,
including
man.
to
I
commercial
don't wanna be
truckers, though
alone
not
in torture.
exclusively, would come into effect
Well, I'm
on
here.
January 15th.
You got the chat. Hail the chat.
And that is essentially where the overview report
We don't
ends.
need to torture
As the
our
Commission
wives.
anticipates that a great deal of the evidence that it will hear
Yeah,
will deal
you're
with
right.
events taking
You're right.
place in
It's
early and
inhumane.
mid-January
Yeah, you're right. You're here. The chat's
2022,
here.
influenced in part by some of the measures outlined in
I
this
just wanna-
overview report.
Bozankasi says, share the pain, though. He wants you to share the pain.
I want my
Parties with
wife.
standing at the Commission,
I
this
want my
overview
wife to
report
know
is available for
what
review in
this
the
is.
participant database.
What you go through?
For members of the public
Yeah.
who wish to learn more about the topic covered in this overview report, it will shortly be made available on the website for the Commission.
I don't think she would end it.
www.publicorderemergencymcommission.ca. Mr. Commissioner, parties, members of the public, I thank you for my time.
Thank you,
That is the
brother. Thank you
presentation
very
of this
much.
overview report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I wonder
Wow.
if it's appropriate at this point to mark that as the first exhibit?
Yes, please mark that as a
Okay,
first
so
exhibit.
Madam Registrar, could you enter?
RA.com.0.000.0.02.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next presentation will be made by Commission Counsel Stephen Armstrong.
I'm going to put a B in my age.
Present into evidence
Be in your bonnet.
second overview report entitled Early Protests, Activities, and Legal Challenges Relating to Public Health Measures.
Hey, Mom. Mom, I want a cheese toast. Grilled cheese, Ma. Tomato soup.
There you go. Gonna need a good lunch.
Hey, Ma.
Go ahead.
Pack a
Grilled cheese.
lunch.
Afternoon, Commissioner, Council, members of the public. My name is Stephen Armstrong, and I'm Commission Counsel. I'm here today to present the overview report on early protest activities and legal challenges.
Another overview.
This overview report summarizes a sample of protests and legal
I need a
challenges
grilled cheese,
relating
Ma!
to public health measures taken in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the time frame is primarily 2020 and 2021, although we'll also touch
Dan
on
Marshall says, it
2019
looks
and
like they're in a
2022.
bingo hall.
This report is intended to provide some high-level context to the very detailed evidence that we will hear in the coming weeks. What this report describes is the development over time of what could fairly be described as a mass protest movement against COVID-related public health measures. The intent of this overview report is not to investigate
now
the
you're
merits or
living.
demerits of any particular
Ma, can I get a
measure
grilled cheese
or
sandwich?
of any particular protest.
Thanks.
The report also addresses
Thanks, Mom.
some of the legal
Grilled cheese
challenges
sandwich
brought
on white
against
bread.
these public health measures.
That's right.
And again,
You got any
it's
tomato
not an
soup on the side?
investigation into the merits or demerits
Yeah, Campbell's.
of any piece of litigation.
Check if we got. You okay?
Let me also say a few words on methodology.
You want freedom?
This report was
You want
compiled
freedom?
based on publicly available news sources
Baby,
that
want
are
freedom?
indexed on the internet. We made a real effort to search for a variety of sources and we tried to cover
How old is this guy, Ro?
in Canada.
He's 9 months old, I think. Or 10 months
This
old?
overview
Yeah,
report
10
is
months.
not
That's it.
an
Yes, Dad. Thank you,
exhaustive
Hill, brother.
catalog of
10
all
months.
protests or all court challenges, and the absence of any event should not be taken as a suggestion by the commission that it's irrelevant or less relevant.
And this baby is
Also
named
made an effort
after
in this report
the chat's
to
own
just,
Dan
stick
Marshall.
to the facts,
Hill,
the
brother.
raw facts,
By the way.
the places,
Indeed.
the dates, and numbers without any extra color. So without further ado, I'm going to move through the report in chronological order. So I will start at the beginning. Pages 5 to 6 of the report address a precursor event
yes.
called the United We Roll.
0000003.
2019, a convoy of truckers.
You don't like this guy?
She's like, oh no, here we go.
Alberta,
Oh no.
bound for Ottawa to protest the federal government's energy policies. Around 170 trucks of various
Thank you, C.L.
sizes
Van
left
Horn.
Red
Hill,
Deer as
brother.
part of the
Appreciate it,
convoy.
man. Thank you very much.
Arriving in Ottawa
I'm
on
blessed. You
February
okay, baby?
19th,
What's the matter? You want mama?
2019,
Mama?
He's like,
the
I hate
convoy
politics.
participated in 2 days of demonstrations on and around Parliament Hill before dispersing. A Facebook page remains active, although focused on energy policy. The page still makes posts and has made posts in support of the Freedom Convoy in 2022. So turning to pages 6 to 10 of the overview report, this addresses the beginning of the protest movements in March 2020 to December 2020. And my colleague, Mr. Shepard, already discussed
In Rise
the
movement.
onset of COVID and the
Now I
public
miss
health
my
measures that
mom.
were
Rest in
taken.
peace. My
And
mother also
protests
made me
began
amazing
pretty soon,
sandwiches. I know.
after
I
those
know.
public health measures
Oh,
were adopted.
should we get mama?
There were protests reported
Hey, Soap.
from major centers such
Come
as
here, babe.
Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton,
Well, Mama.
Calgary, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, and Ottawa in April of 2020. And eventually we saw the beginnings of what appeared to be sort of loosely coordinated national protests by the summer. And so on, for example, July 19th, 2020, protests were held in cities all across Canada. And it was reported that these were part of a coordinated march to unmask movement opposed to mandatory masking.
He's talking about all the previous events that went
momentum,
on.
Seem to have grown,
Okay.
seems to grow from there as the protests
Mama's
grew
coming.
in scale. On September 12th, 2020, for example, it was reported that several thousand people turned out to protest.
This was the first real
mandates and
event
measures in Montreal.
that I think shook the government. You know
As
that
another
they
example,
saw
in
that
October
no matter what they
2020,
put out in
protesters rallied against
no matter what they
lockdowns
put out in
and
the media,
public health measures in downtown Toronto, and it was reported that around
that they
1,500
couldn't.
people were in attendance.
I think they were surprised
And
with
these
the
protests
amount
were
of
by no
people
means
and
limited
the
to the big centers in
volume and the
Canada.
outpouring of
For
support. I think
example,
that's
on
what scared them.
November 7th,
They lost
2020,
control.
As many as 2,000 people marched through Aylmer, Ontario, to protest public health measures.
You had a lot of people streaming it live, so there was no way they could really combat that narrative, you know, the truth.
Religious communities.
I want to hear Pat King's testimony, says Roy Batty. So yeah, me too, actually.
And moving towards the end of the year, just another example, on December 19th, 2020, hundreds of people
We got
marched
DC.
through
If you didn't
Calgary
support the goals of Freedom
and,
Convoy
as well as through
2022, you are a
Montreal.
garbage human. A little rigid, in my opinion, on that one.
And CTV News reported from Montreal that
Must
the protesters
stay
were marching
awake, says an angry
in
atheist.
opposition to public health measures introduced by the Quebec government. So turning to pages 10 to 28 of the overview report, this addresses events as they continue through 2021. And at the beginning of the year, Quebec had introduced a curfew, and it was reported that protests were held that same day, January 9th, 2021, in Montreal, Sherbrooke, and Quebec City. Protests were also reported in January and February in Moncton and Halifax.
What a good kid.
Tell the kid I want ground coffee,
And
fresh
as
ground
well,
coffee. I don't want
across the
yesterday's.
country.
Make sure he grinds it by hand.
And these protests
That's good, thank you.
really seem to pick up speed
That's
and
my
reach
daughter.
a crescendo in the fall of 2021, overlapping with the federal election of that year.
All stuff we know, says Rick Sill. Yep.
As well, in 2021, of course, as my colleague mentioned, was around the time that mass vaccinations became available. So new measures were introduced and protests continued in response to those new measures surrounding vaccination. And so going to the fall, from August 30th to September 5th, 2021, protesters demonstrated against vaccine mandates outside hospitals in major urban centers all across Canada, including St. John's, Newfoundland, Montreal, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Victoria, and Vancouver. Thousands of people were reported to come out and attend these protests.
I think the first one I went
right
to
across the country.
Was in summer.
And the next weekend as well, on September 13th, 2021, protesters demonstrated.
I saw Chris Sky here in Ottawa.
Including at Toronto General
I actually
Hospital,
met him just because he was walking by, and then I got a picture of my kids. I was like, "Hey, you're
London,
like, you're that dude from the
and
internet.
Various places across the country, and this was
You're the
part of the
based
protests
muscle guy.
Yeah, you're. Oh my,
by
take
the
your shirt off.
Canadian
Let me touch your pecs."
And then
Wow.
moving into the
He's a
later
good
part
dude,
of the
man.
year,
He's very friendly on the street.
Is when
Good guy.
the border measures for truckers and for other persons were announced in November, as my colleague discussed.
And then I remember my
as
kids read his
in
book, Just Say No.
Canadian Border Service Agency officers stopped a truck driver.
What really
by the
changed
name
things
of
for me,
Bridget
though,
Belton at the Windsor-Detroit crossing for failing
was
to
this
wear
one
a
woman
mask.
on Twitter.
She posted a video
She's her whole
discussing
body's
it on TikTok.
tattooed up,
And in the video, she voiced
and she
frustration
kept saying,
and
she
emotion
goes,
with,
she said
health
something like, you know, all the guys today are
She would later,
cucks. She goes, nobody's willing to stand up.
with Chris
She's
Barber
like, there's
on
no
social
real men.
media,
And then I started to think to
and,
myself,
these
hold on a
people
second, I'm a real
played a role
man.
in organizing,
You know?
Convoy to Ottawa.
Wait a minute.
The protests continued into December 2021 and the new
And then
year.
you stood up.
And then,
Exactly.
in
I was
held
like,
the
that's
line,
it.
you
Yeah,
know?
man. I'm like,
Ages
I'm not wearing a
29 to
mask anymore.
32,
I'm exempt. And then
we
all my
provided
kids
a
were
very
exempt
basic,
for like 6-8 months, whatever it
skeleton of
was.
certain events leading up to the arrival
And
of the
then
Freedom
what made me,
Convoy
what radicalized
in
me
Ottawa
was
in
I think it was
January of
November
2022.
21. This guy at Costco, he got beat down at
And
Costco.
so, and it's in January 2022.
Oh, right. That
you see
video
the
where they
development of
tackled
the
him for
Freedom
not
Convoy
wearing a
idea.
mask.
Yeah,
Just
that was
accosted
it.
the guy.
Then I made a
January
plan to go in with my
13th,
kids.
2022, Chris Barber, Bridget Belton, James Bowder, and others attend a Facebook Live event
Oh,
hosted
let's
by
hear
Pat
this.
King. The group discussed routes and logistics for the Freedom Convoy before an audience that reportedly reached 3,000 viewers at one point. On January 14th, 2022, Tamara Litch created a Facebook page and GoFundMe campaign for the Freedom Convoy. On January 22nd and 23rd, 2022, contingents of the Freedom Convoy departed from various points in British Columbia for Ottawa, and 2 other convoy contingents were planned to depart from Enfield, Nova Scotia, and Windsor later on in January on the 27th. As of January 5th, 2022, the GoFundMe campaign had raised more than $4.5 million. News reports covered the progress of the convoy on a daily or near daily basis as it crossed the country. Thousands of trucks and thousands of participants were reportedly participating in the convoy as it made its way to Ottawa. Freedom Convoy participants arrived in Ottawa on or around January 28th and 29th, 2022, and that takes us up to the subject matter of this hearing, and we anticipate that further evidence on the origins, development of the Freedom Convoy, the protests, and blockades will be adduced during these hearings. So, Mr. Commissioner, that's the overview report.
That's the overview report.
Okay, thank you. I take it this should be the next exhibit, Exhibit 2?
Yes, sir.
Yep, okay, thank you. And I'm Registrar. This will be marked as Exhibit 2. Okay, next.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd now like to ask once again our Senior Commission Counsel, Dan Shepard, to present an overview report consisting of a timeline of key events leading up to the invocation of the Emergencies Act.
Another overview coming at you.
We got Rick Sill. What's Pat King's situation? He's now chilling back home, as far as I know. But everybody's got a gag order. Look, let me tell you something, right? There's people out there who have been. Remember this Arrive Kang fellow?
Hi,
right?
everyone. Long time no
CBSA
see.
officer,
My name
Patrick
is
McNulty.
Dan Shepherd,
McNulty.
and I'm
Yeah,
Senior
hero.
Commission Counsel
Yeah, he
with
was
the
thrown in
Public
prison
Order
for
Emergency
speaking
Commission,
out.
This time to
Dude's a
present
hero.
an overview
They
report
released him,
entitled
but they made him
Timeline
leave
of
town.
Certain key events.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Crazy.
Absolutely mental.
Absolutely.
This is COM OR 70.
Com OR 0 0
The
0
purpose of this
0
overview
0
report is
0
somewhat
0
different
4.
than the other ones that have been produced by the Commission. Whereas other overview reports are being put forward primarily as a means by which individuals can understand background information that's relevant to the evidence that's going to be heard, this overview report is intended to serve more as a tool. It'll become fairly clear as evidence gets heard in these proceedings that events were taking place across the country, often within compressed rapid timeframes, often in different parts of the country in parallel. As individuals hear evidence about particular events, it may be useful to be able to step back and take a broader view about what was happening Canada-wide. This overview report is intended to therefore serve as something of a reference tool to help put the evidence that will be heard in its chronological and spatial context. You've heard me say with respect to the last overview report that I presented, these are not exhaustive. That is very true for this overview report. If this overview report were to recount every relevant event that took place throughout the events leading up to the proclamation of a public order emergency, then the bulk of the Commission's report would already be written. This is necessarily a highly reduced timeline that deals with only some events that may be useful for participants and members of the public to have in mind when they hear the evidence that will be put before the Commissioner. I want to emphasize, therefore, that the absence of any particular event from this timeline is not a signal that the information is in any way less relevant or irrelevant. Rather, these are only some of the events that the Commission thought would be useful to be contained in a single document before all the parties and available to the public. Next slide. So as a timeline, it is unsurprisingly organized chronologically. Within that chronological organization, the events are also subdivided by either location, when we're dealing with an event that took place in a particular space, or by jurisdiction, when we're dealing with decisions that are more appropriately tied to a particular type of authority, like a level of government. The idea is that this will permit the reader to get a rapid sense of where different events were taking place simultaneously in different locations. It's also important to note, as you read the overview report, that the actual events that are being identified are set out in very succinct and neutral terms. The purpose of the overview report is not to provide detailed information about any particular event, but rather to flag the existence of an event. The Commission anticipates that evidence will be heard on most, if not all, of the events identified in this overview report. In terms of the report's scope, it captures the period beginning November of 2021 and ending in April of 2022. However, the focus of the timeline really are events that take place between January 13th and February 24th of 2022, while the time periods before and after are covered to a certain degree. It is within that narrower time frame where the overview report provides something of a day-by-day account of events that were taking place throughout Canada. Next slide. Now, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, and so I'm tempted to simply read the overview report into evidence, but again, I'm not sure parties would necessarily enjoy that. And so instead, I'm going to take what I've already told you is a already non-exhaustive list of events and make it a little bit less exhaustive by just pointing out some of the events that are actually covered, divided into some rough time frames. I mentioned that the overview report does begin in 2021 with some things what we could style pre-convoy events. This would include, for example, what Mr. Armstrong had already discussed in terms of posts on social media that attracted particular attention with respect to public health measures and border crossings. What I have previously discussed with respect to the last overview report in terms of government announcements relating to border measures and public health measures, as well as to some predecessor protests and events that may be relevant to the circumstances leading to the proclamation of a public order emergency, such as the Operation Bear Hug convoy that took place in Ottawa in early December of 2021. Next slide.
Operation Bear Hug convoy.
The overview report goes on to discuss what can be styled as convoy preparation, both in terms of those individuals involved in the convoy itself, but also preparation taking place by other actors throughout Canada. This includes the events that Mr. Armstrong has already referred to in terms of meetings taken online between different organizers. We also see on January 13th of 2022, the first time that the phrase Freedom Convoy is mentioned in a Project Hendon report.
Hong
The
Kong.
Commission anticipates that it will hear
The
a fair
first
bit of
time
evidence with respect to
the
Project
Freedom
Hendon,
Convoy
what
terminology
it
was
what these
coined.
reports were, what they
Was
contained,
approximately
and how they were
November
shared and acted upon.
2021.
I saw it on Twitter.
Many parties have made reference to crowdfunding and the funding of protest activities. The overview report also talks about certain
The
actions
overview
taken
report.
with respect to efforts by organizers to raise funds in support of the Freedom Convoy, such as the January 14th creation of the Freedom Convoy 2022 crowdfunding campaign on the GoFundMe platform.
Ooh.
The overview
raised
report also
money.
then discusses the actual departure of convoy participants from locations across Canada.
They were raising
and
money.
what different individuals were
They
doing in
they
terms
shut it
of
down 'cause
responding back,
foreign
including
interference.
communications within government.
And then it turned out that it was all Canadians.
Next slide.
They were foreign Canadians.
The next portion of this overview report deals with
Overview
the early
report.
protests taking place in Ottawa,
Part 12.
and a series of events occurring simultaneously in other parts of the country. On January 28th of 2022, convoy participants began to arrive in the city of Ottawa. And at the same time, levels of government began to respond, including the Government of Ontario making requests for federal assistance for access to certain spaces to be
I
used for
require
police staging.
assistance.
It's during this period of time in which the
We'll
overview
send
report
in the
also
horses
identifies the emergence of protests at various locations along the Canada-US border and in other major jurisdictions within the country, including provincial capitals. It covers early protests taking place in the city of Windsor.
On January
that were styled
28th,
as
in
slow
Ottawa,
road, slow
convoy
roll
participants
protests
began to
designed
arrive.
to impede,
Ontario
although not
makes a
block traffic.
request for federal assistance to the federal government for the use
A
of
blockade
Cartier
that took
drill
place
house parking
near
lots
Coutts,
for police
Alberta.
staging.
And other protests in provincial capitals where individuals and vehicles protested a variety of public health measures. These events were largely public. The overview report also captures certain events that, while significant to the circumstances leading to the proclamation of a public order emergency, were not taking place in the public eye. Events such as the January 30th creation of the Freedom 2022 Human Rights and Freedoms Nonprofit Corporation, and briefings taking place within municipal government discussing the possibility of seeking injunctions
Lars.
in response to protest activities.
Where's
Next
my
slide, please.
Where's my coffee? I want a pattern in my cappuccino. Tell me.
Moving into February, this overview report
Draw a heart.
deals with
Mhm.
what we
Draw
can
a
style
heart with the
protests
creamer.
continue
Yeah.
and spread. As the Ottawa protests continue, to the surprise of some, and protests taking place in other parts of the country expand and become more frequent. Events that are summarized in this part of the overview report
Overview
include
report.
highly notorious events such as
Notorious.
$1 million
Trent
by
Dabs in the
GoFundMe,
chat says, I bet this
comments
guy
made
has
by
said
the Ottawa Chief
overview
of Police
report
with
about 200
respect to
times.
policing solutions
Right.
for the Ottawa
least.
protests and changes in the Coutts border blockade.
Overview report.
It also deals with an increasing number of protests taking place now in locations such as Toronto, Winnipeg, and Regina. Also canvassed during this period of time.
Mother, would you like to
continued
see
interactions
my
between
overview
federal,
report?
municipal, and provincial governments, such as the government of Alberta's request for federal assistance to gain access to military tow trucks to be used in the context of the Coots protests. And finally, with respect to Windsor, the capture of the
Everyone's
February
turning into a
7th
robot.
blockade of the Ambassador
David Lopan.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
Moving to mid-February, this timeline deals with how protests continued and the emergence of new responses from a variety of actors.
Freedom
Examples
Convoy!
of this were the February 7th injunction obtained by class action litigants in the city of Ottawa
Bro, even your
designed to
kid got
prevent
it long.
the honking of
You're a
horns by
nurse too,
truckers.
says David Lopan. Hey,
The
Ma.
arrival of an integrated
Everyone
planning
has turned
team
into a
that brought
robot.
OPP and
Let's see.
RCMP planners to the
Look
city
what
of
I got
Ottawa.
here.
There you go.
It dealt with requests for
Looking
federal
good.
assistance by
can
governments
you cut off the
such as the
crust?
government of Windsor
That's the best part!
Okay, fine. Then just
and
cut it
responded
diagonally.
to some of the
Diagonally.
previous
Thank you.
events
Cut it and I
with
need
respect
ketchup.
to online crowdfunding.
No, just one only.
It also
Cut it diagonally and I need
steps
ketchup.
taken by the government of Ontario to restrain access to those funds.
You're quite
as
busy. I'm
proceeds
working.
of
How do you think I
crime.
earn a living over here, eh? Holy crap.
Notably, in this
Right?
period,
Hard work.
this overview report also notes the first meeting of the Incident Response Group, or the IRG.
Oh, this is awesome.
The Commission
Okay,
anticipates
hold on a second here.
that the
Incidents
Commissioner
Response
will
Group.
hear a great deal of evidence on what the IRG is.
Instance
and the
Response
particular
Group.
role
Remember
it played
this.
in federal
IRG is a
decision-making with
secret
respect to the
committee
declaration
headed by
of a
Trudeau.
public order emergency.
Incidents
Wow.
Response
Okay.
Group, IRG, formed in 2018, has met 6 times until
The overview
before.
report then moves
This
to
isn't. Hold
February
on, I'm gonna dig up all the
13th
data I
and
got on
14th,
IRG. You
being
gotta see
the
this.
immediate period of time before the declaration of a public order emergency and the actual decision itself to invoke the Emergencies Act. It covers events taking place in Windsor.
This is
and
why we have to
Coots,
listen to this crap because
and also deals
you're
with
gonna
both
get tidbits.
key meetings that took place
The
at
IRG.
the federal level
Here it is.
and between different levels of government.
Little bits of information about Trudeau's secret groups.
Okay, so this is from my OneNote. This is where I put together like
The overview report
investigations
then goes on
and stuff.
to
Part of it,
recount
okay?
events that take place
There it
during
is.
the proclaimed public order emergency and the events leading up to the revocation of that
Okay.
proclamation.
So I'm just gonna
This
lower this for a
includes
second.
changes in the senior
Incidents,
leadership of the
Incident
Ottawa
Response
Police
Group
Service,
is a secret committee headed by Trudeau.
of the
They don't even
emergency
tell you
measures
who
regulations,
goes to the meetings.
EMRs, and the emergency economic
Only after
measures
months of
order,
pressure did they
or
provide
EMO,
partial, highly redacted
pursuant to the
disclosure of the
Emergencies Act,
information about even what happens at
clearance
this
of
Incident
blockades
Response
at
Group.
Emerson,
Remember this,
Wow.
IRG,
and the
Incident
influence
Response Group.
of
Remember
further
this.
injunctive activity before the courts. Finally, this section of the overview report chronicles parliamentary debates and the ultimate decision to revoke states of emergency that existed at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels. Next slide, please. Again, for the parties, this overview report is available within the participant database. And for members of the public who wish to have this before them as a tool as they listen to the evidence throughout these hearings, this overview report will soon be available on the Commission's website.
Okay, so forgetting
And
about
Mr.
all these
Commissioner, I would ask
overview.
that this
Okay, so the overview
report-
reports are going to be put up on their website. Okay, Public Order Emergency Commission website.
Madam Registrar will be Exhibit 3.
Okay, Exhibit 3 right there. That's Exhibit 3.
Thank you very
Pay attention to this Incident Response Group. CCLA has spoken about this. A lot of people have. I got a ton of information about this. That was just one of my note files. I got files on all this now.
Wow.
Yeah. IRG. I'm going to show you some more on IRG, okay? Oh, where's my information?
You're in deep in the spur hole.
Yeah, why do you think my mother makes me sandwiches? I don't have time to make my own sandwiches anymore, all right? I'm busy over here. Holy crap. Just
No, you get them delivered to the spur hole.
Yeah, I don't have time to make my own sandwiches at this point. I would love to.
The next matter then?
Yes, Commissioner, as you note, the next 2 reports will not be marked as evidence, but they will be presented by Commission Counsel.
Okay, here's some of my
to give context
some of my
for
documents.
some of the evidence that will follow. Those reports will deal with
Okay, check this out right over here.
On the Emergencies
Okay, here we go.
And a review of the Section 58.
Okay, so this is in August 28th, 2018, Incident Response Group is formed. Okay, specifically so that they can put them on the same footing with the Five Eyes Group. Five Eyes Group, if you remember, Snowden had come out talking about how they were spying on each other's citizens using that. Excellent. Get out of here. I'm busy, okay? I'm trying to friggin' save humanity. Get out of here.
Gotta save Canada, kids.
Pilatus, I want that coffee, bro. Freshly ground coffee.
They could be marked as lettered exhibits.
Where were we?
In that term, or it could just be placed on the website. I think the best process would be to place them on the website and people can access them.
Okay. Listen to this. August 28th, 2018, Incident Response Group is formed. Why? We don't know. It's buried in this briefing. This committee, that committee, one about diversifying international trade, Treasury Board, blah, blah. And then this paragraph right over here, let me zoom in on it. The Prime Minister is also creating a new incident response group, similar to those in place with our Five Eyes allies. It will be a dedicated emergency committee that will convene in the event of a national crisis or during incidents elsewhere that have major implications for Canada. The group will bring together relevant ministers and senior government leadership to coordinate a prompt federal response and make fast, effective decisions to keep Canadians safe and secure at home and abroad. Why? This is formed in August 28th, 2018. Let me just make sure if we're missing anything here. Okay, it's the same thing in French. Okay, so we're not missing anything. It's the exact same thing in French right over here. All right, so let's continue over here. So that's August 28th, 2018. This is created. All right, let's keep going over here.
Il est important d'apprécier le cadre juridique de la loi.
Okay, so this is if you scroll down on that same page. I took all these screenshots and I have them archived as well. But in any case, okay, so there's all these different cabinet committees they're creating, but one of them is the Incident Response Group, IRG. Everything's secret there. They don't put out their minutes. They don't even say who's at their meetings. Here's a timeline of events. Very shady. The timeline. Already, February 17th, 2020, the Canadian press is starting to say, hey, hold on a second, what's going on over here? Okay, it's published in the National Post. August 28th, it's created a dedicated emergency committee. Is it off the page? There you go. A dedicated emergency committee that will convene in the event of a national crisis or during incidents elsewhere that have major implications for Canada. First time they meet over here, it's discussed this event that occurred, killing this columnist Jamal Khashoggi, who was slain by the government of Saudi Arabia. I don't understand how that has any bearing on Canada, but let's move on. January 9th, 2020, the group meets to discuss the crash. Let me just lower this volume of this background thing here. Okay, again, to discuss this flight crash. January 2020, that is now all of a sudden about this whole the novel pandemic that happens. Okay, so this is it, really. This is the beginning. This is the real stuff that they're doing. And we can't get any information here. Check this out. Okay? We know that Freeland attended the meeting in Ottawa Monday morning because you talked about it at a press conference in the afternoon. But despite having publicized a meeting involving ministers having taken place, the government was oblique about who was actually there. In addition to ministers, senior leadership from government departments are also in on such meetings. Whoever attends a meeting is dependent on the topic they're discussing, says a government official not authorized to speak on record. Everybody was involved. This rabbit hole with IRG is really, really deep. Let me see here what else I got over here. What is Canada's secretive incident response group that had convened to discuss the Khashoggi murder? Already in October 2018, they're discussing, what is this IRG? Who is on it? What are they doing? What is this formed for? I leave it to you to think about. Hey, le chat. I'm going to eat my sandwich.
Yeah, interesting. They formed it just a few years before this mess, you know.
Je sais que ça fait quand même beaucoup de détails à date. Si j'ai perdu des gens en cours de route, soyez sans crainte. Je vais vous offrir un récapitulatif sous peu. Mais entre-temps,
what were they anticipating?
Et c'est pour les états d'urgence en particulier. Donc, vous voyez à l'écran, c'est la sorte de situation de crise qui est causée par des menaces envers la sécurité du Canada d'une gravité telle qui constitue une situation de crise nationale. Quand on parle de menaces envers la sécurité du Canada, on entend l'une des quatre, mettons grosso modo, catégories qui sont listées sur la diapositive, soit l'espionnage,
Okay, I'll
le sabotage,
translate.
l'influence internationale, le terrorisme.
Okay, so there's four reasons right over here. Espionage or sabotage, spying, foreign interference, terrorism, extreme violence. Sorry, terrorist violence. These are les états d'urgence. That means the emergency état, states, emergency states. States of emergency. Récapitulatif, summary. The government can declare an emergency if they believe, for reasonable objectives, that a situation is urgent. That's it. It's an emergency, temporary, and I don't know what this is. Temporaire et critique, temporary. Découle des menaces envers la sécurité du Canada. That means it poses a threat to Canada, security of Canada. Met gravement en danger la santé et la sécurité des Canadiens. It puts our health and security at risk, our Canadians, where the capacity, anyhow. Okay, here are the measures à la disposition du gouvernement. That means what can they do? What are the measures that they can take? Lorsqu'ils déclarent une situation de crise, le gouvernement peut. That means as soon as they decide that there's a... This is just an overview of the Emergency Act. That's what we're saying over here. En cas d'état d'urgence, il peut établir des règles concernant, this is what we can do as soon as an emergency situation, réglementation ou l'interdiction d'assemblées publiques. They can no more public orders, no more public assemblies. That's what this is. Assemblée publique. Public assemblies. They can actually deny you to be able to do that. You cannot assemble. Freedom of assembly is gone. Okay? Which could, upset peaceful, pourrait troubler la paix. That means peace. Des déplacements vers une zone désignée, that means they can move people. Okay, so that's what they're saying here. That's what happens as soon as you use the Emergency Act. There's a whole, you could see this in English, right? The Emergency Act. It's just going through the Emergency Act. That's what he's doing here.
Donc, le gouvernement peut adopter des mesures en vertu de la loi sur les mesures d'urgence qui relèvent normalement de compétences exclusives des provinces. Habituellement, avant de déclarer une situation de crise, le gouvernement fédéral doit tout de même consulter les provinces. Mais après les avoir consultés, le gouvernement peut agir sans que les provinces soient d'accord. Essentiellement, la loi oblige une consultation, mais elle n'oblige pas le gouvernement fédéral à obtenir le consentement des provinces.
Something interesting, he said they're supposed to have provincial talk to the provinces. But because this thing has never been used before, it's not clear if the provinces have to okay it or not, legally. Because we know that provinces didn't want to go along with it.
Pour déterminer si la déclaration d'une situation de crise est justifiée. Il y a aussi l'obligation pour le gouvernement de déposer les décrets et les règlements pris en lien avec la situation de crise de manière claire et publique. L'obligation de créer un comité d'examen parlementaire où siègent des membres des différents partis politiques. Il y a aussi la possibilité pour le Parlement d'abroger une déclaration de situation de crise où tous les décrets et les règlements en tout temps. Et bien entendu, comme vous le savez, vous l'avez devant vous, après la situation de crise, une commission d'enquête doit examiner les actions du gouvernement et déposer son rapport au Parlement. Dernière protection à mentionner, les pouvoirs qui sont utilisés en vertu de la loi sur les mesures d'urgence doivent être conformes à la Charte des droits et libertés.
That's a good one right there. The Charter of Rights and Canadian Charter is not abridged, cannot be abrogated through the Emergency Act, and neither the Bill of Rights. That's in the preamble of the Emergency Act.
Bon, ce que j'allais vous mentionner en dernière parenthèse, en fait, donc, certains d'entre vous sauront que la loi sur les mesures d'urgence a remplacé la loi sur les mesures de guerre. On l'a entendu mentionner ce matin. Ce que j'allais vous dire en termes de derniers éléments de contexte pour les deux dernières diapositives, c'est que
he's talking about here how the Emergency Act replaced the War Measures Act.
Sur cette diapositive-ci ou sur la diapositive précédente.
There are 4 situations where the Emergency Act can happen.
Donc, c'est la fin de
4 situations.
J'espère que ça vous a orienté un petit peu. Comme vous l'avez mentionné, Monsieur le Commissaire, ces diapositives-là seront disponibles sur le site Web de la Commission. Elles sont disponibles tant en anglais qu'en français pour les membres du public et les partis qui voudraient s'y référer dans l'une ou l'autre des langues officielles.
He's saying this stuff is going to be online on the website, in English and French.
Alors, il reste une dernière présentation, si j'ai bien compris, et peut-être qu'on peut la rentrer avant le dîner et puis il n'y aurait pas besoin de revenir après le dîner. C'est ce que j'ai bien compris?
Oui, je pense que oui. C'est encore M. Lacombe, en fait.
Ah ben, ça va nous sauver du temps.
C'est ça.
Last presentation before break for lunch.
Merci. So I'll be delivering this one in English, and what I'm going to provide you is a summary of the reasons that the federal government gave in February 2022 for invoking the Emergencies Act. You've heard Ms. Chaudhry earlier refer to this as the Section 58 explanation. That is how we'll be referring to it going forward, and the reasons for that will become clear momentarily. So a word about Section 58, Sub 1 of the Emergencies Act. It requires that Parliament review any declaration of emergency, that it be reviewed by the House of Commons and by the Senate. And for this review to occur, there has to be a motion to confirm the declaration that is laid before Parliament, ordinarily within 7 days. And the motion is accompanied by an explanation of why the emergency was declared. So that is the Section 58 explanation. So the federal government gave its explanation to the House of Commons on February 16th. It provided it to the Senate a few days later. That explanation is a document that is publicly available. The number that you see here in brackets is a reference for the parties to access that document within the party database. But the document is already publicly available on the federal government's website and will be made available through our own website as well. So it's important for me to pause here as Commission Counsel and to tell you that this is a summary of the explanation that the federal government gave. The reason the Commission is presenting it to you at this point is to contextualize the evidence that will be called in the coming weeks. So part of the Commission's mandate is to test and evaluate the explanation that the federal government has provided, and for that reason it's important to know up front what that explanation is. So this, again, just like in the previous presentation, is a summary. It's not a complete reproduction of the Section 58 explanation. And as I've mentioned, nor is it an endorsement by the Commission. It is a summary. Thank you. So the summary that the government provided sort of dovetails with the previous presentation that I just gave, in that it starts by explaining the necessary basis to invoke the Act, and for a public order emergency in particular, that there be threats to the security of Canada that are so serious as to be a national emergency. As I've mentioned previously, the threats to the security of Canada include threats or acts of serious violence against persons or property to achieve political or ideological objectives. National emergencies are urgent, temporary, and critical situations that seriously endanger the health and safety of Canadians, that can't be dealt with effectively by the provinces or under any other law of Canada. So when it proclaimed an emergency in February 2022, the government identified 5 components of the emergency. You can see them on the screen here. We could loosely group them, or identify them rather, as the blockades and ongoing acts of violence, adverse effects on the Canadian economy, effects on Canada's relationship with its trading partners, effects on the distribution chain, and the potential for increases in levels of unrest and violence. And the way that the Section 58 is structured is by expanding on each of those 5 points that were in the initial proclamation. And that's how I'll run the next few minutes as well, by going through them one by one. So beginning with the blockades and the activities tied to serious acts of violence, the federal government explains in its explanation that there were various demands by protesters at the time, that they ranged from the end of public health measures to the overthrow of elective government. It also mentioned that there were different tactics being employed. There were those related to traffic disruptions, which we've heard about, and there were others, such as bringing children to protest sites to limit police intervention. At least this is what the government has said, and which I am summarizing. The government also said that there were issues for other governments and themselves in securing the assistance of tow truck drivers to remove vehicles from the blockades. It also mentioned violent incidents and threats of violence, including in particular the seizure of firearms and ammunition in Alberta. And finally,
the violent
as
honking.
regards blockades and serious acts of violence, the government also mentioned that there was online rhetoric, increased threats against public officials, and the presence of ideological extremists.
Okay, so if you want to look at this,
indicating a risk of
see this right
violence.
here? This is it. This is the link. I'm going to drop the link into the chat. I'll edit the description
In terms
so
of
you can
effects on
see
the
it as well.
economy, the government explained at the time that the blockades were having severe impact on Canada's economy. It mentioned losses in terms of employee wages, reductions in automotive processing capacity, and other effects on the auto industry. It also mentioned breaches of the Canada Border Services Agency's plazas in 2 locations, that it anticipated additional blockades springing up, and that there was media reporting about the majority of donations being made through crowdfunding site Give, Send, Go, originating from donors outside of Canada.
Yeah, which turned out to be incorrect, by the way. This is going to be great. I want them to prove all this stuff. Let's go.
With trading partners, the government said at the time that there were expressions of concerns from various American voices, including from the President, from the Governor of Michigan, and from the Department of Homeland Security. It further stressed disruptions on supply chains
Thank you,
and
Chris.
industry.
Thank you, Chris.
And
Phantom
it
5.
said there was an
Appreciate you
erosion
being
of
here.
trust or of confidence in Canada as a place to invest and to do business. In terms of the distribution chain in particular, the government at the time explained that that Canada's transportation system is particularly vulnerable given the challenging geography and climate conditions in this country. It said that there was an imperilment of Canada's welfare from disruptions in the transport of crucial goods, medical supplies, food, and fuel. And it also said that there were attempts by protesters in Ottawa in particular to impede access to the airport and to block railway lines.
Okay, so I actually went to that airport, a little
As for
drive-through.
the potential of increased levels
There was
of
nobody
unrest and
blocking. It
violence,
was a drive
the federal
around.
government said, in addition
remember
to there
that.
being
Yeah.
ongoing
You like
illegal
drove
activities,
around and
that there were
like I
concerns
think
about
waved at Pat
ideologically
King
motivated
and like
violent extremism,
banged your
in
head on the
particular,
steering wheel
that the
for
number
like
of
an
people
hour.
who
That was a lot of
supported
fun.
Such ideologically
That was a
motivated
funny
violent
stream.
extremism could be increasing and could be a source of violence. That there were efforts
We got
by
Mr. Sunshine Baby.
the
Hail,
United
brother. How you
States
doing,
to
man?
enter Canada.
Congratulations, by the way, brother, on
supporters of
the kid
ideologically
coming and the
motivated
house
violent
purchase.
extremism.
Congratulations, brother.
It also
congrats on
mentioned
getting
the
married.
efficacy
Yeah,
or
man.
inefficacy
Oh, you got married too, eh?
of current measures
I
that
think
were in
so.
place at the
Hey,
time, including
congratulations,
injunctive
man.
relief
Fantastic. Good for you,
and
bro.
the ability of municipal and provincial authorities to enforce the law using the tools at their disposal. Finally, the government mentioned that the protests in Ottawa were impeding the proper functioning of the Government of Canada, including jeopardizing Canada's ability to fulfill its obligations with respect to the protection of the diplomatic community.
The diplomatic community was under.
So
what are you talking about, brother?
I'm at the point of conclusion here. What I'll stress again
That's
is
crazy,
that this is a summary of the conclusion that is in the Section 58
here's the
explanation.
conclusion.
It's not the Commission's conclusion
Okay.
on the Section 58
That's what he's
explanation.
talking about right here.
And you can see from what's on the slide that it essentially tracks the meaning of what it would be required to have a public order emergency. It says that the situation in February 2022 was critical, urgent, and temporary, that the emergency arose from threats to the security of Canada, and that the measures that were used were necessary in order to supplement provincial and territorial authorities to address the situation. The explanation also concludes by saying that the measures were tailored such that any effects on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms were reasonable.
Okay, now interesting enough, you're not allowed to go against the Bill of Rights or the Charter of Rights, even during an emergency act. It says it in the preamble.
Presentations of the day in its
pull it
entirety,
open
as
here.
I understand it. So I'll pass the floor back to you.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Thank you all. So we've run through quite quickly the introductions and the
Here's the
opening
Emergency Act.
statement, which I didn't labor too
Preamble.
long on. And I think we can start
Okay.
tomorrow, 9:30, with the, I believe there are a series of panels
See what he's
tomorrow.
saying here first.
Should be, I hope, will be covered in without extending too late tomorrow. I hope will be another not too severe day, but we'll wait and see. There are, seeing no other issues being raised, I suggest we rise until tomorrow. Alors, on revient demain à 9h30 pour commencer la preuve comme telle avec des panels qui vont commencer à présenter la preuve, si je comprends bien, sur ce qui s'est passé à Ottawa. Alors, thank you all. Merci à tous.
Okay, it looks like they're Breaking up till tomorrow, 9:30. All right, well, we'll be here 9:30 tomorrow. I guess we're not going to stop, Pan, until the end, right to the end.
Let's do it. Hold the line, brother. Honk, honk, MFers.
The commission is adjourned. La commission est adjournée.
All right. Emergency Act, right over here, third paragraph in the preamble. Okay, here it is, right here. And whereas Governing Council, in taking such special temporary measures, would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I don't know what that is. The international version, I don't know what that is. Particularly with respect to its fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged, even in a national emergency. Even in a national emergency. There it is, right there. Okay? So much for the law. So much for these pieces of paper. Conclusion. Okay? Right over here. Scroll back up. Whoops. Scroll back up to the top. February 14th, Declaration of Public Order Emergency. You go right to the bottom of it. Conclusion. That's the same thing what the guy was chatting about. The conclusion right over here. The measures have been carefully tailored such that any potential effects. What does a potential effect mean? That means an abrogation of your rights on rights protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms are reasonable and proportionate in the circumstance. And this is a reason that I've taken the black suppository, brethren. I've taken a huge, big black suppository, and I have no longer any trust in these politicians to accurately follow the law unless held to account, and I'm hoping we're going to see that here. I'm not sure we're going to, though. Let me read the chat out here, and Pan, I love your opinion. We got Zeppelin Nizer, love your dedication, H.A.I.L, brother. Trouble is, and I didn't want to, I was watching it this morning, and Pan can attest to it, I really didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? I really did not.
He said, should we? No, yes, no. And then he basically said, you know what? I feel like I got to do this. You know what? We started this. We got to finish it. So we're going to do it.
Yeah, we'll be here bright and early, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, and we're going to be continuing this because we've got to shine some light. And we're going to, I can't help but being a little bit of a goofball at times.
Well, it's going to end up being, a farce, a dog and pony show. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of threat to security was posed, by the convoy, and how they're going to, spin that, And thanks to everyone for joining us. Hail
right.
the chat. We're gonna, even if it is a big dog and pony show, we're gonna be here covering it, and we appreciate you guys being with us for it.
Let's read some of the chat before we head out of here. I want to see it because I didn't get enough chance to really go through the chat. So let's see what people think. Okay, so let's see over here. We go, it ain't over till it's over, says Kim Strippin, and she's right. She is right about that, Kim Rapley, the strategy here is to put all Canadians to sleep with this prolonged discussion about points of order and who is scheduled to witness next week.
Right.
That's right.
That is one theory. That's a good theory.
We've got Rick Steele. They'll do their best to frame it in the worst possible way. Alex Dietz, same. The boringness is their strength. Steve Martin. If they go against the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they broke the law. Abuse of power. Hail War Campaign, says Palma Thrasher. Hail the chat. Hail, sister. We got Kathy Ray. They're repeating lies that were proven to be untrue. The terrorist bouncy castle training ground, says Grisou. May Lee, just turn off phone for safety purpose so you don't hear snitches, right? That's right. We got J Limited. Existence of COVID commission will not happen. We need the comedic relief, says Shlomo Silverman. Appreciate it. Well, I can't help it. It's just, it's so goofy at times, Comp 00007 Niger document Delta 4. Jack B, Tell Ma we want breakfast. Yes, I will indeed. See y'all back in O-Town in January, says Kim Strippin. Wow, really? I hope not, man. I hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, I'll be there. Maria H. Can't stop now, Rowan Penn. Ha. Save a Canadian, drink a moose head, says Angry Atheist. I want to see the docs the Senate is referring to between Trudeau and his cabinet. Okay, now that right there, Winiska, they made it clear. Let me see over here, okay, if I can pull that back up. Because that stream... Okay, now that it's being made live, no, that's still the live version, so it hasn't come out yet. It's not being the archived version is what I'm referring to, right? The archived version, no, it's being completed. Okay, we're looking for the archive, but that right there is interesting because they say in that specifically, Justice Rouleau, that they are not going to be putting out all the documents that they've collected. These are the documents that Cabinet used specifically to justify their use of the Emergency Act, and they are saying that because of national security and the rest, it's only going to be disclosed to people within this actual Public Order Emergency Commission, witnesses, the rest who signed an NDA. So they're not necessarily going to be publicizing or putting it out, publicating it to the public. So we'll find out. Hang in there, brother, says Sleeping Giant. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. I need to hear that. That's for sure. DC, well, I've always considered myself a dangerous person. Come get me, you bastard. Hail, brother. Absolutely. Rickardy says, Hail, H.A.I.L. That means a lot to me, brother. I got to say, honor, accountability, integrity, and loyalty, old values that we want to live. We want to live those values, and they are inspirational, aspirational, but we've got to, together, brethren, so that we can build a free world for our children and for our children's children. Thank you so much. Hail the chat. Hail, brethren. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., we will be back again. Hail, brethren.